Hi there, welcome to Fieros Reborn with me, Fieros Reborn. So yeah, this is a new piece of artwork I've just finished. I guess it's finished. I don't know if it's finished or not actually. Quite bright. It's got glitter on it. It does seem to radiate a light from it, which is quite nice. But I don't have much enthusiasm for it at the moment because I have a headache. It's not the artwork's fault. I just have a headache. Um, so let's put it over here actually to obscure some of this crap over in this area. Oops. Yeah. So this is a Fieros storytime video. I felt like doing one because I've got a headache. Because often the reason I've got a headache is because I've just got too much stuff in my head, and to talk about it gets it out of my head. That makes sense, doesn't it? There you go. So there you got your picture shining its glorious light on the proceedings. Okay, now that I've done that, I'm going to talk about my past again until it is done. I've also got these sock puppets that I made earlier, but they're not ready yet. They're still drying. So until all that white glue goes down and turns clear, then no sock puppets, I'm afraid. So at least it's actually gluing properly now. So I have had a big inner child evening, and I gave myself a headache. I got too excited and I just burst. I think I might have popped a blood vessel in my head or something. Let the farts roll. Okay. So, let's talk about my past. So, I've covered the fact that I was gay, or I thought I was gay anyway. Andrea, relationship. She cheated on me, broke up. Was in a band. Band eventually broke up. Got a job. Needed a job because my Legoland job had finished. Money's running out. I did have a input of cash from a tax return. That was about 800 quid. But money was running out. This is in 2004, I think. Yeah. Oh, I can't remember. I don't care either. So I got a job at Outback. This guy called Charlie, who was younger than me by a couple of years, started pursuing me for a relationship when I cut my hair. So I cut my hair because I wanted to symbolically make a change from the frame of mind I was in when I was with Andrea. I just wanted a new slate, clean slate, whatever, to try and move on from her. I didn't actually move on from her though. I didn't move on from her at all. I think I moved on from her now, ish. I don't know. I don't know why I haven't moved on from that person. Okay, so I got into this relationship with this guy called Charlie. Against my will, really. I didn't want to be in a relationship. I wanted to be single. I wanted to still experiment with my sexuality. I wanted to go to uni and experiment with my sexuality. Initially, I didn't want to go to uni at all because I wanted to make my band work, but my band didn't work because we couldn't get another drummer, basically, and my bassist was just too preoccupied and depressed and didn't want to carry on. So the band just fell apart. The reason we needed a new drummer in the first place was because the old drummer was doing his A-levels. He was a couple of years younger than us, and we'd left school and he hadn't left school yet, so he was still working on his A-levels. So he didn't have enough time to commit to the band and stuff, so poor energy. Yeah. Okay. And the other member from the band had left around the same time that Andrea broke up with me, or we broke up. I don't think Andrea broke up with me. I think it just fell apart. It was mutual, really. I mean, it was just that she cheated on me, so there's no further situation to be had because she was sleeping with this guy called Alan from uni. So that was that. I'm gonna have to rein my hands in again because they're starting to itch my nose all the time. Or maybe I should just let it happen. Just let it happen. Okay. Then what? Oh yeah, so I got with this guy called Charlie, and I didn't want to be with him. I wanted it to be an experiment with my sexuality, but it turned out to just be a mess, really. And I thought I was falling in love with him, but I was really falling into this kind of sick, weird feeling of entrapment with him. I was falling into guilt with him, basically. I felt like I had to say that I loved him. Oh my god, yeah. I felt like I had to tell him I love him. It was a guilt feeling, really was the feeling, is guilt. Being pulled into this guilt spiral where I felt like I had to, this compulsion to go out with this guy even though I didn't want to, and I didn't like it and didn't feel like it and whatever, but partly because I didn't have anything else to go to, anyone else to go to, nothing else was working. I was trying to flirt with these girls at the pub, not the pub, but the restaurant. That wasn't working. And yeah, I kind of came out to my bassist, and then I came out to my parents as being gay, but my bassist just freaked out when I came out to him. That might have been an instrumental thing in the band falling apart, actually, as well. I heard from him later on that one of the reasons why he wasn't so keen on being friends with me was because I came out to him. Because I said I fancied him as well. I mean, I didn't really know if I fancied him or not, but I was just a bit stoned. Thought I fancied him. Told him that I thought I might fancy him, and then he freaked out, and then I pretty much wasn't allowed around his house anymore after that point. So there you go. So I started going out with Charlie because he wanted me to, really. And I didn't know how to stop it, and I didn't know how to say no. And I just felt kind of pulled into it. Yeah. And then I was in this relationship that I didn't want to be in. And then this whole kind of relationship thing descended upon us, as in it became this trap, it became this jail, this kind of situation that I'd got into, and I'd gone past the point of saying no, I don't want to be in it, and I still didn't have the balls or the guts or the ability to get out of it, so I just went with it, basically, for the first part. So I kind of had this initial resistance to being in a relationship with him. I always had this feeling of resistance and pain and anguish around having sex with him. There was some thrill as well to it, but there was mainly this icky feeling of not wanting to do this, enjoying it like right sort of towards the end, but this feeling of on the approach to it, like, oh, I don't want to do this, I don't like this feeling, and yeah, and I just didn't want to do it. Didn't want to do sex with him. But he really wanted to, so I went along with it. And so I moved into his house because he wanted me to, basically. I guess I wanted to move out from my parents' house, and not necessarily to move in with him, but I did want to move out from my parents' house. That was something that I wanted to do. I went to uni. That was nice. I felt like I was so glad to be away from him and away from parents as well, because my parents were, I don't know, it felt a bit oppressive, really. I mean, I felt like I couldn't be honest with my parents. Even after the coming out thing, I just felt like I couldn't actually express myself in my family. I could only say about 5% of what was true for me. in terms of my feelings and my thoughts and my ideas and my goals and whatever. So it just felt very like dark, really dark, eerie in a way, stifling. Ooh, yeah. Yeah, when I was growing up in the later teenage years, the feeling in the house is very dark and bleak feeling. The feeling in the house when I was a kid, as a young child and as a younger teenager, like up until about age 16, 17, maybe even up to 18, the feeling in the house was okay. It was okay. But then when I got to 18 and I was thinking about my sexuality differently, experimenting with it and whatever, the feeling in the house is very dark. It is kind of choking, stifling, claustrophobic, dishonest feeling. I felt afraid of my parents. I felt especially afraid of my dad. Yeah, it wasn't a nice feeling in the house. And I wrote these songs about the problems I was having with my sexual identity. The sexual identity thing really affected me during my teenage years, because I felt like I couldn't tell anyone about it. I felt like because there was so much homophobia in in the sixth form, but also previous to the sixth form as well. Because there was so much homophobia, I couldn't tell anyone about my feelings and thoughts about sexuality. And it's not like I did, I mean, I didn't even really know what my sexuality was, but it was just that I had all these thoughts about sexuality, about whether I'm gay, whether I'm straight, whether I'm bi, whatever. And because I couldn't talk to anyone about it, or I felt I couldn't anyway, it was just a nightmare because I just had all these thoughts in my head that I can't express to anyone apart from Andrea, who I did express my thoughts to. But that's quite a difficult situation for her to be in because I was in a relationship with her, and she's a girl, I was a guy, and I was constantly tussling with my own sexuality, which made the relationship very hard for me to continue with because I was never settled in myself. So I knew I enjoyed having sex with her. I knew I fancied her. I did fancy her. Um, I I loved having sex with her. It was great. But then I had these other thoughts and feelings that were in conflict with that. Um, yeah, and it's even hard for me to talk about it now because I think that I've been punished so much in some way or other, like teased or mocked or shamed or belittled or homophobically taunted about expressing any non-linear. I don't know what the right word is. Any alternative sexuality has been very difficult for me to even talk about, even in my more recent adult life, because homophobia is so rife, and I don't know what else you could call it. Alternative sexuality phobia, if there's something like that. Maybe I'm not really even au fait with the latest terminology and stuff, but basically the feeling I have is that I'm not allowed to have an alternative sexuality. I've never been allowed to have an alternative sexuality. I'm not even sure if I've been allowed to have a sexuality of any kind. I've not been allowed to be straight, because if I was straight, people who thought they didn't think I was gay, probably they were teasing me that I was gay. But the people who were teasing me, or maybe thought that I was gay, wouldn't believe me that I said I was straight. So they would say that I was in denial. So I'm not even allowed to have my straight identity. If I did decide that I was gay, that was punishable by more teasing as well. So neither sexuality was actually safe for me to say was my sexuality. So that that whole later teenage years was really fucking conflicted in my head. You know, I used to feel a lot of suffering in my head, really located in this kind of head and sort of throat area. Like I'd go into this kind of feeling of pain, and I couldn't escape it, and it just would come over me, and I'd have all these thoughts, and it was like this kind of black anguish that it would just come over me, and I couldn't do anything about it. Like I would just act it out, like oh god, and I'd like try and break up with Andrea as soon as that feeling came, because it was just I couldn't I couldn't find a way through it, if that makes sense. I couldn't kind of commit to anything in particular, and the compulsion or need to state something solid and to say I'm straight, or I'm gay, or I'm bi, and to be happy and okay with any one of those polarities, that that compulsion to be able to sort of commit to something in particular while each of those things was asking for its own attention, that was distressing, really distressing. So I've got like these, basically it was three angles: straight, bi, no, sorry, straight, bi, and gay, and each of them was just tearing at the other, saying, well, you can't be bi because you're more gay than bi, and you can't be gay because you're more straight than gay, and you can't be bi because you're really straight anyway. So, and each of them was like, was sort of fighting each other inside my head, and it felt so urgent that I needed to have an answer, because this relationship that I was in with Andrea seemed to be in crisis because of the fact that I couldn't decide, or I didn't know, or I couldn't figure it out, or I was in conflict inside myself about this sexuality issue. So that was really tough, really tough. And so then Andrea and I broke up anyway. Okay, so I went on holiday to Florida for Disneyland and stuff, and Universal Studios and Epcot and all that crap for like 2 weeks with my family and my mum, dad, gran, brother, me. No cat. We had a cat at that time. And on that holiday, I was really depressed actually as well. That was possibly the worst depression I'd had up until that point. I'd been depressed before on holidays. Like we went to this holiday in Spain one year, where it was, I think, March time, and a lot of the things in the resort, or the town and the resort that we were at, they weren't open. Things weren't open. It was just kind of downtime season still, and the weather wasn't that great. It was kind of overcast and stuff. So most of the shops weren't open. There was just a few shops open. We did get to play tennis a bit, but there was like hardly anyone there. It's pretty deserted, the whole place, and it was just really kind of empty feeling and very dull and boring. And as a kid, that's the worst, isn't it? If you're a kid or a teenager, then to be somewhere weird where nothing's going on and it's just this dead feeling, it's the worst. So that wasn't great. And at that time, I also had a girlfriend at home. Her name was Sarah, and I was moping about her. So I was depressed there, but that wasn't that bad. I mean, that was more like missing and pining. That wasn't depression as such. But this, I may as well talk about the other holiday when I went to San Francisco in the winter with my parents, and I had a girlfriend at home again, Vicky. That was only a short relationship; it only lasted for about 2 months. But yeah, I was moping about her as well. But that wasn't depression. That was okay. That was more like pining still. But that was manageable, because by that point I was masturbating properly, and she'd given me one of her t-shirts with some of her perfume sprayed on it, which was really nice. So I would sniff the t-shirt and wank. Yeah, it's full disclosure here, babies, boys and girls. Ooh, ladies and gentlemen, not boys and girls. Yeah, it's full disclosure here. So I would sniff her t-shirt that she'd given me, and wank off with it. This feels like so long ago now. But at the time, it was very, very important. This whole stuff, not the wanking, but the whole thing was very important to me. Yeah, okay. And then, so this holiday that I was talking about in Florida with Andrea at home, Andrea was actually going to uni, started uni while I was away. And that was concerning. And so our relationship was, it was a long-term relationship. I believe it was about a year and a half that we went out. Might be even longer than that. I can't remember exactly when we started going out. I think we started going out in April. Oh my God, I just remembered. We must have started going out in April or May of 2000 and... I don't know. It was in the springtime, because I remember us fooling around in the playroom out there. Just kind of play fighting and rough and tumbling. And don't know if we had our first kiss out there or what. Yeah, I think we did have our first kiss in there, maybe. Or up in my room. I showed him my art sketchbooks, because we both did art. Yeah, and so we both did GCSE art and we both did A-level art. And I showed her my sketchbooks, and I had actually showed Vicky my sketchbooks as a way of sort of tempting her. I don't know why showing someone your sketchbooks is like, look how good I am. It's supposed to sort of tempt someone to be with you, but it did work. I think Vicky went, whoa, he's really good at art, I want to be with him. And then Andrea said something which was very wise, actually. She said, you don't just show everyone your sketchbooks, do you, to try and get them to be with you? And I was like, no, and I lied, because yeah, I did show everyone my sketchbooks to try and get them to be with me. So yeah, so I showed her my sketchbook, and I think we kissed in my bedroom actually for the first time. Then we moved to the spare room and kissed and stuff, maybe with some boob squeezing, not sure, on the spare bed, which was nice. It was nice. It was dark in there at the time. And then we sort of emerged from our kissing and cuddling and touching thing. Nothing sexual, other than maybe boob squeezing, but no nakedness. No. And then we emerged and we came down here and made toasted. No. It was toast, butter, chicken, mayo, lettuce and cucumber maybe, or maybe it was just chicken. Basically, it's a chicken and mayo sandwich, but with toasted bread. Not a toasted sandwich though, because it's not like grilled in one of those grilled toasty things. It's just toast. I don't know what to call this. Toasted bread, chicken mayo, toasted mayo chicken bread, toast chicken mayo sandwich with toasted bread. Chicken mayo sandwich with toasted bread. Okay, so we had that, and that was the first time I'd had that actually. And after you've just had a load of nice kissing with this girlfriend, with this girl that you fancy the pants off of, or you think you love and stuff, and then you have this beautiful tasting sandwich that you've never had before, because I was only like 17, and so I hadn't tried everything in the whole world before. I hadn't had toasted. It was the toasted bread that I hadn't thought of. Sandwich but with toasted bread. Genius idea. Different from a toasted sandwich. It's not like a toasted cheese sandwich or whatever, because it's not like squeezed together and it's not been put in the grill, which toast. Okay, so therefore, because if you put it in the grill, only the cheese gets toasted. You can't toast the other side, can you? So this was toasted bread, okay, with butter, mayonnaise, chicken, possibly lettuce and cucumber. I'm not sure. And it was so tasty. It was like the best tasting thing I think it's the best chicken sandwich I've ever had. Toasted bread. Yeah, and that was something that Andrea had showed me, because apparently she did that all the time. And I was like, whoa, this is amazing. I was sat out in the garden eating this, going, "Oh my god, this is amazing! This is the best thing I've ever eaten." Yeah, she was like, "Okay." So we had our relationship. Her parents met my parents on a couple of occasions. They'd come around and hang out for dinner and stuff. My parents are so weird though. Like, so Andrew's parents had, Andrew's whole family had lived in South Africa to begin with, and then they'd come over at a certain point because stuff in South Africa wasn't very safe, and they felt scared or whatever, and they wanted better prospects, so they came over to here. And my parents are just very strange. You know, my parents have a certain sense of humour and stuff, and whatever. And I just think my parents aren't very real sometimes. They're very kind of socialised, if that makes sense. They are a bit habitual, or they were anyway. But Andrew's parents were more truthful, if that makes sense. So they'd been through stuff. They'd been in a crappy place. You can't really afford to be in denial or whatever. You can't really afford to be in denial of your feelings and thinking when you're going through shit. I mean, like, you know, I don't know, just being in a crappy area or something. Whereas my parents had always been middle class, and they'd not really been through that much crap. I mean, they had, but somehow they'd socialised themselves to not go there. Whereas I don't think Andrew's parents really had that. You know, they would actually say what they thought and felt. Andrew's dad was a bit quiet and gruff, but also a fun person. So they were very, very different, and it was bizarre having them together for dinner because it's just like two completely different worlds. I mean, my parents were, I think, like, my parents are idiots. I warmed much more to Andrew's family than to my own family. Like, I much prefer Andrew's family. Preferred, and still prefer, in a way, to my family. Because they're just a little bit more genuine. You know? They're a little bit more spirit in them than my parents. I mean, my parents are okay, but they don't have much spark. Yeah. So, but that relationship was good. You know, I really, really loved her. We had a lot in common. We were really intelligent. That was one of our things. We were quick-witted. We had the same sort of sense of humour. We were both artistic, both really creative, both high flyers in our subjects. Interested in English, reading, you know, both fun people. Yeah. So when it came to me going on holiday to Florida while she was starting uni, and school had been over for a while, we had both been working at Legoland together. And actually at Legoland I was starting to doubt my sexuality even more because there was this weird guy called, maybe his name was Carl, but we called him Stacky because he was a warehouse guy and he wanted to call himself Stacky. So we called him Stacky. I called him Stacky anyway. I'm sure other people did as well. And I was starting to sort of think about my sexuality regarding him because I sort of, okay, so I like South African people generally. He was South African as well. He was a funny guy, a quick-witted guy. He was a good-looking guy as well. He had nice teeth, he had nice nose, he had nice hair, he had nice eyes, and a good body as well. He was well built, not like really, really muscly, but as in he had a sort of toned-ish, slim body, and he kind of ended up looking like the guy who I went out with in the future, called Charlie. In the future, from that point of view, anyway. Yeah. So and we had to work together on a couple of projects, like cleaning out this stock cupboard was one of them. Actually, I think that was the only project we had to work on, but it was in close quarters with him during that time. So I kind of got this feeling that I found him attractive, maybe, or I kind of did and I didn't. I wasn't sure still. I think I did fancy him, but I was afraid to admit that to myself. So, and I'm not sure whether he fancied me or what was going on, but there was some sort of weird feeling between us. So that was confusing. And there was just a lot of information for me to process because I found him attractive because of the things that I found attractive in Andrea. So I found the brightness that I liked in Andrea. I found that attractive in him. I found the sense of humour that I had in Andrea. I found that attractive in him. Yeah. I think there's another aspect to this as well, which was that Andrea was a little bit flaky. She was a little bit flaky. She flaked out on me on a few occasions, on a few important occasions. Like, it was my dad's birthday, I think it was my dad's birthday or something, and I was playing a gig in the band. And she was supposed to come along with her friend. And she just didn't end up showing up. Like, we were texting or calling it, whatever. She said, yeah, I'm just getting ready. And she was getting ready for like 3 hours, to the point where I think that she just didn't want to come, but she wouldn't say it either. So I was just really pissed off. And I ended up throwing that energy into the music that I was doing, which actually worked out all right. I remember walking around like with the guitar and like my head down, like I was walking around with the crowd like it was very dramatic, melodramatic, but it was cool. I liked it. Yeah, but I was really pissed off. Yeah, and she was kind of like, she couldn't fully commit to me either because she fancied other guys as well. She fancied other guys. I fancied other guys. Yeah. And yeah, so kind of she was always flirting with other guys, which pissed me off and freaked me out. Because there was nothing I could really do about that. Like, I couldn't control her behaviour. I could be moody about it and tell her off about it, but she's still going to do it. So I felt I had a bit of a loss when that happened, and I used to go to the music room and just play music and write songs and stuff when she started flirting. So she was kind of flaky. So I think that possibly if she'd kind of given me more attention and had committed more to me as well, that maybe, I think what I'm trying to say is that maybe part of this thing of fancying other guys is that they were giving me attention. And she wasn't. So I think that maybe I was curious, partly because people were showing an interest in me. Yeah. Which is a shame. But nothing happened with the Stacky guy. Thankfully. I just find men and the whole male man on man thing, me with a man, I find it traumatic. I find it very hard to process that. Yeah. So he was in there, he confused me about what do I want, who am I, what are my feelings. And again, I felt like there wasn't really any space for me to explore those feelings inside myself because like I didn't feel like I could talk to anyone still. I didn't feel like I could talk to anyone because gayness was still not accepted as a topic of conversation. I mean, you really had to know that you were gay and you had to really stand up for that and commit to that as your sexuality preference or designation, whatever you do. You know, it's kind of like you put it on like a label of yourself, and then you act in that mode, and you have sex in that mode, and you talk in that mode, and you tell people, you refer to yourself as a gay person. So you have to really know that that's what it is, because it does come with, or did come with, teasing and bullying and taunting and stuff. Yeah, so I didn't know. And I didn't feel like I had the space to be able to figure it out either, because it just seemed like there was this pressure around the whole topic. Like I couldn't go into it far enough to really figure it out, because I would hit these walls where I feel like I'm not allowed to think about it. I'm not allowed to think about it. I'm not allowed to think about being gay. And so I would shut down and I would get into conflict, because the conflict was saying stuff like, oh, I shouldn't be thinking about this, and no, 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 I don't want it to be that way, and this kind of self-rejection, self-denial. So I could never fully go into actually allow myself to feel this. I mean, I actually did look at some gay porn, and I wanked off to some gay porn on a few occasions, but it never really stuck. So I'd look into gay porn every now and again, and I'd be like, mainly because I got bored with women, with female straight porn. So I went on to gay porn. I thought, well, I'll try that for a bit. It worked all right, you know. But then I'd end up going like, yeah, let's go on to straight porn. So, yeah, I never fully felt I had the space, because I was in a relationship with a woman, or a girl, whatever. So that felt like a pressure as well, that I couldn't have an alternative sexuality. I had to be fully straight. I just felt like I had to be fully straight. I know that it doesn't necessarily work like that these days. Like, you can be bisexual and just be in a straight relationship. You could even be gay and be in a straight relationship. I don't know how that works. But yeah, but at that time I just felt this pressure to make a decision or figure it out or whatever, and I didn't feel like I actually had the time or the space to do that. So there was another holiday, in fact, when I was in France, while I was still with Andrea, and she was going to come over to France to spend like a week there. And I think it was a 2-week holiday or maybe 3-week holiday, I'm not sure, but she was going to spend a week or 10 days with us. And I was dreading it, because I felt like I hadn't had enough time before she came over, and I was still trying to figure out all this gay stuff, you know. So I was up in my room in this. So the house in France that we used to go to was owned by some family friends, so we would stay with them for a week, and a week by ourselves in their holiday house in France. And so I'd be up in my room. I always had the same room, pretty much, after a certain age. I always had the same room in that house on holiday. So I was up in my room, and I was like writing stuff and playing songs, all about this sexuality issue, basically, like this feeling of like, okay, it was sort of like, I felt like I was coming to terms with it a little bit, in some way, that I felt like I needed to reveal this part of myself, this gay part of myself, and that I was getting ready to do that. But then this fact that Andrea was going to be coming to holiday, whatever, because we'd actually spent, it was quite a lot of effort to actually get her over there, because she needed to do something with her passport, or get a passport or something, I don't know. She had to go to the embassy, so we went to the embassy, South Africa embassy, got the passport, or whatever it was. I can't remember exactly what it was that she needed, but she needed something to be able to come over to the holiday in France. So we did all that stuff. So it was quite a kind of ordeal to even get her to be able to come in the first place, because initially I really wanted her to come. I really wanted her to be on holiday. But then I got on holiday, had this time to myself, and I was like, I need to. All I could think about basically was this gay thing, and trying to sort of figure that out. And then I had Andrea coming in, you know, the time between, as in the time was running out between where I was and when she was coming. So I started like freaking out, basically. I was like, I'm kind of not ready. I don't want her to come yet. I'm not ready for her. And I got really, really upset in my room. And I like didn't come downstairs to eat food and stuff properly as normal, and I didn't go out into the pool and stuff. I just kind of holed up in my room for ages, and I just didn't want to talk to anyone, and I was just really kind of sad and depressed, and more sad and depressed for the fact that I felt like I was not allowed, this feeling of being not allowed to have my feelings, not allowed to have my genuine responses. So I was like up in my room, and I felt like I was bad, because I felt like I was wrong for staying in my room when everyone wanted me to come down and have food and play whatever and be sociable and go in the pool. I think being sociable was, I was being called to come down and be sociable and stuff, and I just didn't want to be sociable. I just wanted to have that time to myself. So it made me more depressed and angsty because I felt I was being forced to do stuff against my will. For example, swimming pool. I just did not want to go in the swimming pool that year. And I think what I've realised later on, why I didn't want to go in the swimming pool actually, was because my dad used to swim naked in it. And I find that really weird. And I think it is weird, but I hadn't realised just how weird it was. I didn't realise how weird it was at the time. I knew. It's weird because it's like I didn't even know what my response was to it. Because he'd sort of made it appear to be normal. It's so strange why he did that. Like, no one else was doing that. You know, he was just like, I want to be naked and I want to run around naked. And it was almost like it doesn't matter whether anyone else likes it or not, he was going to do it. So it was almost, actually thinking about it, because there were occasions where other people were there who were not close family or anything, and he would still do it. And it's like, it's bordering, it's not even bordering, it is some kind of sexual crime, as in like some exposure crime, you know, indecent exposure type of thing, because it's not like he'd checked with everyone beforehand and made sure everyone was okay with it. He just did it. And yeah, so I think that's probably why I didn't want to go in that swimming pool anymore. Because I knew my dad was always swimming around naked in it. You know, I don't have an issue with that unless, as in, it's fine if everyone is okay with it. But I wasn't okay with it. And also, I wasn't even given the opportunity to reject it. So I think that's bad. Yeah. Very bad. Like, I could probably draw my dad's penis because of the amount of times I've seen it. I don't think that's good. That's not good. I shouldn't have seen my dad's penis that much. I'm so fucking glad I never saw it erect. But I shouldn't have seen my dad's penis that much. That affected me. I don't know where that issue comes from for him, why he has that issue. But apparently he said it was to sort of say up yours to bullies from school. But okay, yeah. Go and say up yours to them then, and don't run around naked all the time. Because he used to run around. No, he actually did used to run around. He used to run around naked in the garden in the summer. When it was raining in the warm summer. And we used to do it as kids as well. We all ran around naked in the warm rain, which seems fun, but it's weird actually when you look at that. Like, when I was a kid, I didn't know it was weird, but if I looked at it now and I saw, for example, let's say I was in the next garden and I looked over someone's fence and there was a 35, 40-year-old man running around with two young boys naked in the rain, I'd be like, what's that? Why is that happening? That's really, really weird. Really weird. But at the time when it was going on, it was like presented as just fun, because we were naked as children as well, and that was fine. But if you look at his behaviour, that's weird. I think it's fine if kids are running around naked. Okay, kids like running around naked, whatever. But for him to be running around naked, that's weird. And I think that's sexually abusive, actually. I think the way that my dad treated, exposed his body in the family to the household on an ongoing basis, just constantly naked all the time, is traumatizing, actually. It was one of the things that came up in counselling when I first started having counselling, was just the amount of times I'd seen my dad naked and how gross that was. And I hadn't even realised how gross that was, because I hadn't had the opportunity to realise how gross it was, because it had been presented as normal. And it wasn't normal. So yeah, so I didn't want to go in the swimming pool, because he would be swimming around naked in it and be like, yeah, come in, I'm naked, feels really nice. Yeah, great, thanks. I don't want to be swimming near your penis, thanks very much. Ugh. Like, what's wrong with the guy? So Andrea was coming and I wasn't ready for her, and I was freaking out and I was depressed. My mum came up at one point and had a talk with me, and that was alright. That was nice, I guess. I just told her that I didn't want Andrea to come and that I was kind of stressing out, because I'm not sure if I told her about the sexuality thing there or not, but I just felt like I wasn't ready for Andrea to come or something, and I don't want her to come. And I might have said, because I'm not sure about my sexuality, but I'm not entirely sure if I said that. I kind of think I might have done, or might have sort of hinted, but I don't think I was quite ready to tell my parents. I certainly didn't explicitly tell her like that I'm worried about my sexuality, or I think I'm gay, or anything like that, because I fully told my parents in a family meeting that I organised. Yeah. Oh god, my fucking family. Fuck. Yeah. So she was coming and I was freaking out, and then she came along and it was actually okay once she was there. But yeah, I was freaking out. Okay, so then moving on to the holiday in Florida, where I was so depressed that time, worse than I'd ever been. Just the atmosphere in Florida was really weird, very bleak feeling. Andrea was at home, Andrea was starting uni, that was really uncertain. Our relationship had been kind of rocky by that point anyway, because we'd been thinking about the future as to what was going to come up. Was she going to go to uni? Yes, she was. What was I going to do? I was going to have a gap year. How were we going to see each other? How were we going to make this work? Was it going to work? She was like, well, we'll just have to see how it goes when we get to it. And I was like, I wanted a decision beforehand. I wanted to say, look, are we going to commit? Commitment's a big thing, a big word for me, certainly in that earlier time period of my life, the commitment aspect. I wanted her to be able to say that she was willing to make it work, and it was more vague from her. She didn't present to me with that sense of willingness. She presented with a kind of if, maybe, possibly, we'll see, like that, which didn't feel committed. And I wanted her to just say, yes, we'll try and make it work, or yes, we will do our best to make it work, or yes, I will do my best to make it work from her angle. And then I think I probably would have just felt, oh, okay, yeah, I want to make it work too. Let's try our best to make this work. And that would have been really good. And if it fell apart, fine. But I was just stressing out that I couldn't seem to get this sense of commitment from her. And I also really couldn't fathom my own sense of commitment, because I felt like there were so many variables that were in the future about how things would go, that I felt like the outside world, or like the future of the world in terms of our relationship and what was going on in our lives, was so changeable that I couldn't for certain say that I would be able to commit to the relationship either. So I was at a point of distress for myself and a point of distress regarding her lack of commitment. So we had this horrible kind of truth-telling session in the car one time, my car. Yeah. Oh man. Why am I telling this again? I got stuck in this part of it again. Of the story, I mean the whole story. I think maybe I should talk to a therapist instead of doing this on camera now. Because I'm starting to get to points where I don't feel actually safe to say things on camera because I'm ashamed of them. And I might not be able to go where I need to go to say what I need to say in a public forum like this. So maybe this is the end of Fieros' story times. Maybe I've covered as much as I can cover without incriminating people or revealing stuff that I don't think is public. What do you call it? Stuff that I don't want to tell the public. Stuff that other people wouldn't want me to tell the public. It's just bad behaviour and weird feelings and stuff. Yeah. Yeah, maybe I should call it a day on Fieros' story times. I mean, I said I wanted to get the story up to 2014. I mean, I could just say the brief basics of that. Like, after I came out of hospital, I was very, very depressed for a long time. Spent a lot of time in bed. Was suicidal. Was trying to rebuild my life. Trying to rebuild my feelings. It was really, really hard. And that was horrible. And I tried to get. Oh, so I went back to Legoland. By that point, I was 23 years old, and I felt like Legoland, going back to work at Legoland at 23 after having done it when I was 16 and 17 and 18. I felt like I'd grown up, but I hadn't grown up because I was going back to Legoland to work. So I was doing the same job that I did when I was 18, but I was thinking more like when I was 16 because it was my first job. Kind of my second job, I guess. My first job only lasted 5 weeks, so I don't really count that. My first real job, proper job, long job, whatever. So to go back to it at 23, after going through hospital for psychosis and having gone through all that stuff, and I was like really depressed, and to go back to Legoland because the reason I did that was because I knew I could get that job straight away because I'd already done it. and the company that was doing it now, that same job position, which was the ride photography position, a retail assistant for ride photography booths, in Legoland, the company that did that had changed. Originally, it was governed by or managed by Legoland themselves, or like a sort of, it was managed internally. But then they had this company called Pixolve, which was, I don't know, they just had a deal with Legoland or whatever to do. It was like a franchise of it, to do all the equipment, and all the technical side of it was done by Pixolve. And I believe that I was employed first by Pixolve, not by Legoland, although it went through Legoland's HR department and stuff. And Legoland's books, my employer was actually Pixolve, not Legoland. So, but as I said, when I first had that job, it was done by Legoland themselves internally, and then Pixolve came along later. So when I was 23 and it was being run by this external company, I knew that I could get that job because I could say that I'd done it before, and I also knew that it would sort of go well because they didn't know that I'd already done that. As in, they didn't. Oh, I don't know what I'm trying to say. It's like it was a new set of people. I just knew that I could do it. I knew that I'd get that job straight away. I knew that it was virtually certain that I could get that job. So when I came out of hospital, like towards the end of being in hospital, I was really wanting to just get back to a normal life. I just wanted to have a job. I wanted to have a job. I wanted to get in a band again, and I couldn't wait to do that. I couldn't wait to be out of there. And I was reading this book called The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron, and I was doing some of the exercises in there and starting to sort of think like I had a goal or something to move towards, like to get my life back on track, have a band, have a job. And I was like, I felt really desperate about getting a job, like really, really desperate about getting a job. After I came out of hospital, I was just like, I bought all those newspapers like Loot and just the Maidenhead Observer, Maidenhead Advertiser, sorry, the Observer, the Slough Observer, the Slough Express, all the local newspapers, looking for jobs, and I would look for jobs in them all the time. And then when this Pixelf thing came up in there, I mean, that had been there as an ad for a little bit, and I thought, oh, should I, shouldn't I? But I thought, okay, I'm desperate now. I know I can get this job. I'm going to call up, and I got an interview, and the same day that I went for the interview, they said, yep, you're hired, fine. So I got that job, but then when I was actually doing it, I also felt like, God, this is shit. Because I'm doing the same job I did when I was 16. I haven't moved on in life. In fact, I'm worse off in a way, because now I'm old, and everyone here is young-ish, from 16 to 18, or 16 to 19, right? And I'm 23, and I'm depressed, and I've gone through all this shit in my life. I don't have a band anymore. I don't have a relationship. I've just come out of hospital. I feel like shit. And now I'm in this crappy job that I was in when I was 16. I just felt like my whole life had gone like backwards a step. So not only was I in a crap job that I was in when I was 16, but now I'm depressed and I've been through all this other shit as well. So I just felt crap about my life in general. I was still writing songs, and I did use the time, as I used to use the time in Legoland, to write songs on till paper, write lyrics on till paper, you know, and think about how they might go. But they're all really depressing. I was always talking about the relentless march of days. The relentless march of days meant that the days just kept on coming, and I just kept on feeling depressed. So it's like just time spread out ahead of me, and all I could look forward to was more depression. So, and also the relentless march of days was something about the sense of loss, continuous loss. So the days were just going by and going by and going by into oblivion, right? And so I was feeling depressed through that whole time. And it was just like one damn monotonous day after another. And there was no real joy in life. And I was doing this monotonous fucking job, which was where ask the customers the same fucking questions over and over again. Something like, do you want a frame with that? Do you want a key ring? Do you want a magnet? Do you want a photograph? There was this thing called a photo frame, which I don't know what it's called actually, but there was something where you had like 4 different photos in a bigger thing or whatever. Yeah. So you had to ask them, and it was like £16 for that thing, man. £16 for a photo frame thingy bob, with 4 pictures in or something. And the magnets was like £5 or £4 or something, or £6. I don't know. It's expensive basically. So you ask them these questions, you take the money from them, and then you make their thing. So you type in the number of their picture and print it out, and you put it in the folder thing, or in the magnet, the keychain, or the photo pass. I think that's what it's called. It was £16, and you could get a photo, a keychain, or a magnet from any of the rides for four of them. That's what it was. Bada bing, bada boom. Or maybe it was £12. Whatever. I think you ended up getting 1 free or something. So, photo pass. Yeah. Right. So I was doing that job, and that was incredibly monotonous, which was getting me down as well, because there was nothing stimulating, and it was the monotony of that is like the amount of times you can see someone go, look at me, look at me, there I am. Where am I? I'm over there. Which ones am I? The amount of times you hear the same shit and you have to say the same shit, it's driving me bonkers. The only part that I enjoyed of that job was for about 5 to 10, maybe 20 minutes maximum, when the girl was showing me, like the supervisor girl was showing me how to do it in the first place. That was the most enjoyable part, because I was learning it, and I felt kind of it was fun to learn it on the till and stuff, and I was kind of enjoying the learning, and I smiled a bit and I laughed a bit, and I was like, oh yeah, blah blah blah, wicked. And then I'd learned it, and then I was like, this is shit, and it was shit. And it didn't help that there was this guy who was bouncing off the walls because he was always doing cocaine every time before he did the shift. Like, really happy guy. I was like, oh, you fucking cokehead, because he was always talking about raves and stuff that he'd been to or that he was going to go to. So that's why he was always bouncing around all the time. Damn cokehead. So his name was Nathan, I think. Yeah, and then I also was getting bullied as well, because I fancied that supervisor girl, and I told people stupidly, and then I started getting teased for that. So I was the guy who fancied Becca, and everyone there teased me for the fact that I fancied Becca. So not only was I depressed, doing a shit job that I was too old for, that I was the oldest one pretty much on the team there, and I wasn't in a supervisor position. So not only was I old, depressed, in a shit job, I was also being teased about something that was kind of really childish. So yeah, so that was shit. And I'd just come out of hospital, so I was mentally not feeling great. I mean, I was depressed, but I mean, like, my whole sense of life, direction, career, happiness was just shot to pieces. My self-esteem was shot to pieces. Everything was fucking shot to pieces. I remember having to wait for a turd for about an hour. The fucking supervisor guy, I think his name was Nick, he was a fucking prick. He was the main guy who teased me. He made me wait for an hour and needed a turd, and my butthole was bursting by the time I was allowed to go for my fucking lunch break to have a turd. Yeah, so fuck that place, basically. I mean, like, I was already depressed and subdued, and I think because of that I didn't fight back, because I didn't really have the energy or the willpower or the mindset to fight back and fight my corner and tease back or banter back or whatever. I was just like, I can't. I just don't have the energy to do that, you know. So yeah, so I was being teased at Legoland, and also I'd said to the guy, the boss, during the interview and afterwards, that I only want to do it part time, because I remember talking to the guy on the phone saying, I can only do part time because I've just come out of hospital for psychosis or mental health problem or whatever. Um, I'm quite shaky, so I'm not able to do full time. And it was bizarre how strong I could be about that. Like I was very certain that I needed to only do part time because I was fucked. So in a way, I was quite assertive in that moment, about my needs, but there was no other way around it. I was not going to be able to do full time. I just couldn't handle it. So I said that to him, and he's like, yeah, that's fine. And then he just kept putting the pressure on to do longer hours. And I felt like I had to say yes. And I just wished they hadn't put the pressure on. I wish they just said, and I'd also said to them, don't put me on my own, because that will just make me suicidal. It's not good for me, because it's not good for me to be by myself, right? I've got suicidal depression, don't put me by myself. And what do? Because everyone has to go by themselves, it's a rotation thing, I had to go by myself on one of them. I was like, I told you I don't want to be by myself. I can't be by myself, really, because it's just going to make me worse. So, yeah, I mean, I just got really pissed off. Also, my CRB thing hadn't. What was it? So, I had to do. Did everyone have to do everything? Everyone had to do CRB checks. So that was done by them at Legoland. But my pay had been held for like the first 5 weeks or something, whereas everyone else has started being paid after 1 week. My pay was held for like 5, maybe even 8 weeks. I think 8 weeks actually. Maybe I'm just exaggerating to make myself feel better. My pay had been held back because they didn't know why my pay had been held back, and I kept asking my boss. I was like, "Dude, where's my pay slip? I haven't been paid anything. Like, I've been working now for 5 weeks, or even 6 weeks, or 10 weeks, 300 weeks, and I haven't been paid. Like, where's my fucking money?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, I don't know." I was like, "Well, can you sort it out, please? Because this is 5, 7, 15 weeks in, 10 weeks that I haven't been paid for." um, and can you sort it out? And eventually, he actually called someone. I think he just bullshitted me to say that oh yeah, I've called them and they don't know. But he actually found someone who did know eventually. Because the reason was, he just went, oh, blah, 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 yeah, I'll sort it out. And he never did anything. And the one time I said to him, like, look, it's been 3,000 weeks now that haven't been paid for. And he went, what? Really? Oh no, that's really bad. There's just something clicked finally in my boss's head. And he went, I should actually do something about this. And I went, because I think I was threatening to leave, basically. I was like, look, I haven't been paid, mate. I'm going to leave if you don't. Yeah, that's what I did. I threatened to leave. I'm going to quit if I don't get paid, because I'm not coming into work. I've got a car to run, man. I can't carry on doing this. Yeah. And so eventually he actually called up HR, and the reason that I hadn't been paid was because my CRB had come back with a blip on it that they needed me to just go in for a meeting to talk about it, to explain what it was about, before they could release my pay, which could have been done like after the first week or two when it came back, because they'd actually known of that for ages. They just hadn't got around to it. So there I am, sat there, or stood there on these photo booths day after day after day, not being paid. No wonder I was getting even more depressed. Everything was fucked in that job. Fuck that job. Yeah, so all I had to do was go in for a little meeting and explain the fact that because I slapped my dad, because I got arrested, I got a caution on my CRB for battery. Right now, a caution is an offence that doesn't get spent, so it continues to show up on your CRB, I think potentially indefinitely. So therefore, whenever you get an enhanced disclosure, it will come up on an enhanced disclosure CRB check. So that means that if you're working in a school or an environment that you're dealing with vulnerable people or children or whatever, that the HR department has to kind of talk to you about it and just see what that was about and get an explanation about it, right? So I had to go in for a meeting and talk about this, and I did, and I just explained, look, I'd been diagnosed with psychosis at the time, and things were all messed up in my life, and I hit my dad. I didn't even hit him, I slapped him. Okay, I struck him. I slapped him, and I got arrested, and then I was hospitalised for psychosis. So it's all fine now, kind of thing. And my parents didn't press any charges or whatever. So it was that was cleared up, and then I got paid and carried on. But as I said, they were pressuring me to work longer hours, and I didn't want to work longer hours because I didn't feel like I could. And then I decided to go for a course in performing arts in the local college, Langley College. I don't know why, because I felt like drama. My drama teacher was one of the funnest people I'd ever met, and I thought that he was kind of like a happy guy, and I wanted to try and be happy or something. I don't know. I just wanted to do something that was towards my performing career, so it was going to be involving drama, dance, and singing. So I was doing that course. I only did it for 3 weeks, but I was doing that course while working at Legoland as well. So I kept working at Legoland on the weekends, and then did this course on in the daytime. And I just felt like, so I would wake up in the morning depressed, and I felt like it was difficult to go to college, but I did manage to go to college. Some of the stuff was fun in the first part of college. We did a lot of fun stuff. We did improvisation workshops. We were just doing acting skills stuff. We did little scenes from plays, things like that. But I was in this place in my head where I just couldn't make sense of anything. I couldn't find the meaning of anything. And I was obsessed with finding the meaning to things. So we would do like a little play part, and then we'd get our feedback. And I was just thinking, I don't understand why we are doing this. I don't understand why anyone does this. I don't understand why I'm doing this. I don't understand the point of drama. I don't understand the point of acting. I mean, I like it. I'm good at it, but I don't understand it. Something about this whole thing feels really off or nihilistic or something. I feel nihilistic. I feel depressed. I can't get a sense of meaning out of anything that I'm doing. And I also can't just let it be either. I can't just do something and let it be kind of, oh, that's just that, and okay, fine. Like, for example, it would be similar to, like, let's say I did a video here, and then after the video, or even during the video, I'd be thinking to myself in a really negative way, and confused and sort of distracted, fractured, broken feeling way. I'd be thinking to myself, why am I doing this? What is the purpose of this? This is all going into oblivion. This is all this doesn't mean anything. This is going nowhere. What is the purpose of it? It all feels like everyone's miles apart from each other. It's weird. I don't understand it. What are we working towards? What are we trying to achieve? What is the goal of human existence? That kind of existential terror and crisis and depression and feeling of doom and despair was with me all the time. And I felt that in the drama room there, especially. And maybe it's just about being in a drama room, that it's dark in there. And there are weird lights, and it's just the atmosphere of it that feels slightly contained that I don't understand. And the transience of it all as well. It's all very transient. Nothing stays the same for very long. I think that's kind of what I like about artwork, is that it just stays still. It doesn't move anywhere. Well, it can obviously move, but I mean, I get a sense of stability out of artwork that I don't get from speaking and acting and singing and stuff. I like the fact that artwork is pretty much the same every time you look at it. All right, your perception of it changes a bit, but I like how it's fairly stable looking and feeling. It feels quite permanent, even though it's not 100% permanent, because anyone could mess that up or change it. So it's not like it's invulnerable or anything. But I like the feeling that it feels like something's enduring from moment to moment with it. Whereas with speech and singing and music, because music and speech is always changing, it feels like there's nothing permanent, there's nothing to latch onto, there's nothing to kind of feel stable or secure about. Whereas artwork, I can feel like, it's there, it's that. Okay, I can let it be that. That's not going to dissolve straight away. You can stay looking at it, and it continues to exist. Whereas with words, I found like words and sounds and singing and drama, I found it also ephemeral. That really was bringing up the sense of nihilism, the sense of pointlessness, of futility. Because if everything is always like ephemeral and disappearing all the time, you do one piece of work and then that's gone. And I just had this sense of things decaying all the time. I just felt like everything was always in decay and depression and dissolving all the time. And I felt very, very concerned or obsessed, really, about that sensation that life was being continuously obliterated from one moment to the next. And it was a horrible feeling, and it was an obsessional thought pattern that I got into, which is something that started initially when my granddad died, which I mentioned ages ago in some videos. The sudden realization that death was a thing and death was real and you couldn't deny it. And then I got hooked into that set of thinking and being constantly aware of the passing nature of moments, and the passing nature of feelings, and the passing nature of happiness, and the passing nature of pleasure, that I got very depressed about that. I hadn't worked out the passing nature of depression, though, which I should have figured that out. Yeah. Or the passing nature of grief, or the passing nature of nihilistic thinking. That would have been good. Yeah, so at this course, so I was doing this course in performing arts in the days, in the weeks, in the days of the week. Man, what am I saying? And then on the weekends, I was working at Legoland, so I was pressed for time as well. And I felt like I had to learn lines. I've traditionally, historically, been terrible at learning lines. Yeah, I used to always fudge up my lines in school plays, because partly I found it amusing to make up my own words. I don't think the drama teacher liked that, but I felt like it was more funny somehow when I forgot my words. So I made it part of the thing, even though it was kind of unconscious that it happened in the first place, but I always used to spontaneously roll with it. So then I think that because I knew that I got some kind of feedback from making stuff up and spontaneously improvising, that I've then actually found it difficult to actually even remember words correctly at all. So I had to learn all these lines for this play, and there were a lot of lines, and I didn't know what the fuck I was doing. I couldn't learn lines. And I was depressed, and I remember being back in the lounge here, depressed, sitting in my dad's big throne chair in the middle of the room, trying to learn these fucking lines, depressed as fuck, trying to learn these lines, sleepy, trying to learn these lines. Got to go back to college because I was back home for lunch or something. And fucking nightmare. And I also remember in college looking up things online, such as how to cry, how to induce crying, because I felt like I couldn't cry anymore. I was depressed, but I couldn't cry. Oh, mate, that whole period in time was really fucking hard. And I don't know if I was getting therapy or not at that time. Probably not. I was just getting these injections for antipsychotic medication, and I was taking antidepressant medications, which weren't really helping. They were just numbing me a little bit from the worst of it. Wow. Yeah. What else? Okay. So I did that. So this was in 2009. Then I remember that I talked to my acting teacher, because we had like different teachers for different modules. The dance. Oh god, I had to do dance I'm not a dance person. I like to dance. I like to dance in a club, but to dance with like ballet steps and stuff and choreography, no, no. So we had to like do these jumps across the room, like these sort of like legs out jumps, and I was like trying to do them. I was like, okay, this is not for me. I am not. This is not good. I am not a ballet person. I am not. I felt girly. I felt gay. Um, I didn't enjoy it. I felt embarrassed. I felt it was ridiculous. I wasn't good at it either. I don't know what I was doing. You know, it was all wrong. It was all fucking wrong. Okay, and then we had singing lessons as well with this teacher, and oh god, I felt like also this is another aspect. I was 23. There was another girl in the class who was 25. I swear I've told this story already, but I'll tell it again. There was another girl in the class who was 25. I was 23. Everyone else was 16, 17, 18. So, I mean, looking back at it now, that's not a big deal. But it is a big deal when you're 23 and everyone else is 16, 17, 18. Because there is a maturity gap at that age. You know, if I looked at it now and I saw people who are 23 to 16, I'd be like, they're all dicks. Right? They're all dicks. You're all just young. I just put you in the category of, right, you're all young. And therefore, who cares? You're 23, they're 16, 17, 18. You're all dicks. What's the problem? You know, you're all legal. Who cares? You know, fuck. But when I was there, it just was such a big feeling of a maturity gap because there were these kids who were 16 who like got their first moped or whatever, and they go, "Yeah, I got my first moped." And I'm like, oh, why? Why am I here? Why have I done this to myself? You know, when I did the interview for the course leaders thought that I was going to be an asset to the group because of my musical skills mainly, and the fact that I'd done A-level drama and stuff already. Because the course that I was doing, I think, was a BTEC, so it was actually no, it was a national diploma. I think I can't remember. But it was like it must have been equivalent to a few A-levels in performing arts, and and so yeah, so they thought that I was going to be an asset to the group because of my musical talent and because I'd have previous experience in this stuff already. They actually even said those words. We think you'll be an asset to the group, and I was like, I don't know. My concerns were that everyone was fucking young, and it was going to feel weird. And I got there, and I started doing the course because the course leaders were like, "No, no, no, I'll be fine. Yeah, you'll be fine. Nah, you'll be fine. It'll be fine. It's not going to be weird. Nah, it's going to be fine." And I got there, and it was weird because it was like so. So I'd gone back. Basically, my whole life had regressed. So I had regressed. Yeah, I mean, I'd fucking regressed. Look at what I was doing. I was doing the same job I did when I was 16, and I'd gone back to fucking college with 16-year-olds. I'd regressed. My life had regressed, and I was realizing I've regressed, and this is not the right thing for me. But because my life had just been bazookaed basically by this mental health thing. So I felt like I got to a sort of point of maturity when I was 19, 20 at uni, and while I was at America as well. But then the whole mental health thing, and the psychosis thing, and being put in hospital and then being depressed was like, you know, giant fucking bazooka shooting a hole in my life. You know, who the fuck do you think you are to think you're mature and understand things? You know, who do you think you are with your band and your job? No, none of that anymore. You know, shit everywhere. And yeah, just left a massive hole in my life and, you know, fucked my head over. Like, who am I? What do I want? I mean, I know that my life is about having a job, having a girlfriend, having a car, having a band, doing my artwork. I was clear on that. But there was also this kind of like, part of me didn't know actually what career I should be doing. Um, it's just all over the place with regard to my direction in life. I feel I'm still a little bit in that now, actually, honestly. You know, I do all this stuff, and that is the direction I go in, but where am I going with it? You know, I don't earn money from this. This is not a career. This is a fucking hobby still. Yeah, so it's like, the mental health thing shot a hole in my life, and then I regressed. My life situation regressed to kind of back to when I was doing A levels, because I was doing a course of A levels while working at Legoland. I think I kind of like wanted to reset my life. Maybe that's why I regressed, because those were the only times in my life by that point, as in my A levels, was the time in my life where I felt like I had direction, where I knew where I was going. So I felt like I needed to go back and do that, because that was the only period in time that I felt like I had direction. But when I did go back to do it, and I went back to having the job, I had my car. I didn't have a band, I don't think, but I was doing gigs and stuff. And I was doing this performing arts course. So it was basically like I had gone back to being 18 or 16, 17, 18. But being 23 and having gone through everything that I had gone through, it wasn't the same. And I was aware that it wasn't the same. And I was aware that I had regressed. And I was aware that this is not the correct situation for my life anymore. That doesn't make any sense. You know, I was really highly aware of the maturity gap between myself and the other people there. And I was just aware that I was in a phase of life that was beyond where I had put myself. So I'd put myself back into this kind of college and basic level job situation because it was familiar and because that's where I had certainty of some kind. But because I'd already moved on in my life, to go back to it was a step back, and possibly even those decisions to regress were like making my depression worse, because although I felt like I needed to go and do those things because they were all I knew about myself, that I could be certain of, that that's what I wanted to do, those sorts of things, the singing, not the dancing, but the singing and the performing and stuff, I knew that that was something I loved to do when I was younger. But yeah, so having gone back to it just didn't make any sense at all. So I quit that, and I remember, as I was saying, I remember how I had this conversation with the acting tutor, and I said to him, look, I don't think I can do this anymore, because, and it had only been about 3 weeks, but I don't think I can do this anymore because I'm really depressed, and I have to deal with my mental health stuff first. I need to deal with my depression, and I can't handle it, basically, and I can't figure out the meaning of it, something like that. And he went, oh, okay, I understand. That guy was a pretty cool guy, actually, and it's a bit of a shame in some ways that I didn't continue. It would have been cool if I'd gone to do an acting course, an adults acting course, rather than a college acting course that was open to adults as well. But I should have probably gone and done a real acting course for adults, like an evening class for adults. But I guess I felt more like a child, and I just didn't know where my place was in life at that time. And I also quit the Legoland job as well, because mainly like they weren't listening to me, and they were putting me on crappy things by myself, crappy ride booths by myself. And it was fucking cold. It was like November, and I was wearing every piece of clothing that I had, and I was freezing cold still, even though I was really well dressed for the occasion. I don't mean style-wise. I mean I had enough clothes on to keep me warm, but I was still freezing cold. And yeah, and they just weren't listening to me, and they didn't care, and I curled up underneath the counter and tried to sleep in between, like, so people would come off the ride, they'd come and get their photograph, and then you'd get a period of, I don't know, a minute or 2 or 3 when, like, between when the next people come along. So I tried to curl up and hide underneath the counter and just try and sleep because I was depressed and sleepy. I might have got caught doing that. I definitely got caught sitting down on an upturned bin. You weren't allowed to sit down in these things. Okay, so you had to stand up the whole time. It's fucking annoying. And I was tired and depressed, and I didn't want to stand up, and I couldn't really stand up because I was so like weighed down in myself. So I used to turn the bin upside down or like sit on the edge of the bin somehow. And I got told off for doing that. Yeah. So, and then as I said, on this other ride, I just tried to fucking hide underneath the counter and curl up and wait for the next people. I just thought I would just wait until the people show up, and if someone goes hello, then I would get up out of the thing. So I was a terrible employee by that point. Because I was just thinking, fuck this, man. I'm cold. I don't want to be here. I hated going into work. I hated getting changed in their fucking changing rooms and stuff. I don't know, why did I even feel like I had to get changed in the changing rooms? You know, why don't I just stay in my fucking outfit from the beginning of it? Yeah. I felt like it was sort of mandatory to get changed in the changing rooms. I don't know why. Maybe it was. Maybe it was actually. I don't know. Anyway, so I quit that and I sent them an email basically saying, I don't want to work anymore because it's too cold, and you didn't listen to me about the fact that I only ever wanted to work part-time anyway. So, yeah, I'm not coming in again. Bye. Basically, because I was pissed off at the management because they never paid attention to anything I said. Therefore, I was becoming more and more unhappy because I wasn't getting my way, but I wasn't getting my needs met. Basically, I wasn't getting my needs met at work, as in my working needs, the needs that I had for work. My working needs, the needs I had for work. I wasn't getting my needs met, so I was getting more and more unhappy, and I wasn't being respected by the management. Like, they weren't listening to me. They weren't allowing me to do the things that would keep me happy, to keep me above board. It's not like I was just kind of moaning and whining. I had fucking clinical depression. I had depression. I had suicidal depression at that time, and these managers, specifically one guy called James, who was a fucking dick, who it just didn't give a toss. All he gave a toss about was the numbers, as in how much the fucking bottom line, you know, how much they were earning from each day. So I kind of got to a point where I was just like, fuck them, fuck it. You know, I don't stand for this. I'm not coming in anymore. I'm not doing it. I quit. So I quit that. And just didn't go in. Sent them an email. I guess I told my parents I'd quit. And I just decided, no, I'm going to go back to bed instead. So I did that. Oh. Also, I was just starting to work as a guitar tutor for a local charity called Swipe Music. SWIPE, Southwest Indian People's Enterprise. And then there's music. So they mainly do music, but they do other things as well now. They've got this kayaking, canoeing thing on the Jubilee River that they do. Yeah. So I got a job as a guitar tutor based off a referral from the mental health services. So the mental health services people, I had like this kind of, I don't know what her role was, some kind of, I don't know, let's just say community liaison activities coordinator or something. I could forget her name as well, actually. Annie? Her name was Annie. So I had this social worker, Annie person, who was, I don't know, she'd heard of this place called Swipe, which was nearby to the mental health centre, the outpatient community mental health centre in Slough called New Horizons, which I had to go to for these meetings about my mental health, about my medication. I had to meet with a psychiatric doctor, consultant doctor. I had to meet with, that's one person, psychiatric consultant doctor, sorry. I had to meet with a care coordinator, which is a person who coordinates my care, whatever that means. So I got things like a free bus pass, and there were activity groups I could go to and stuff, which I never did go to, I don't think. Well, I went to a couple of them, I can't remember. Yeah, and I had to get my medication administered to me, which is an injection every 2 weeks in the butt, or in the thigh, really, the back of the leg, thigh, butt, back of the thigh, butt area. Okay, just underneath my butt, or the top of my butt. It was the top of my butt. Yeah. Okay, so I had to go there and get my medication administered, and have these meetings about how things were going and stuff. What else? Oh yeah. So sorry, Annie was this kind of activities person. She was doing sports groups like cricket group and football group and maybe badminton group as well. But she sort of like, she was also just like another worker to help with stuff. And she knew this charity called Swipe, and so took me over there and spoke to the guy there called Jamie, who was like one of the main volunteers, who was in charge of events and programs, music programs and stuff, whatever. And it turned out that there was stuff I could do there. I could volunteer there. So I volunteered there to begin with. Just basically, it was something for me to do, so I wasn't just in bed at home all day. So I'd ride along to this place in Slough with my guitar, and I would do things like practice by myself in the room, or I would like practice with other people who were there. Like Jamie, that volunteer guy, who would try and sort of get me involved with whatever was going on. So there was like a young band called From Hostile Hands, and I just sort of sat in on their rehearsals basically a couple of times. I didn't really do anything, but I was just there, sat in, listening, whatever, just being a part of the environment, being part of the scene. Yeah. What else did I do there? I remember quite clearly trying to fix this electric keyboard with Jamie, or a couple of them or something. We were just like looking at them, and I remember just doing a bit of it, and he was doing it. So he kind of was like a mentor or something. He just sort of took me under his wing a bit. I volunteered for that, so it was my free time, and that was really cool in a way, because there was no set hours to it either. Like, I'll just go along, and Jamie said this perfect thing one time, which was just like, yeah, it's your own time, you're free to go and free to stay, whatever. And that was beautiful, because one of the things that I had found really difficult with work was the fact that I had to be there from between certain hours. So whether it was 9 to 5, or whether it was like 10 to 6, or 12 to 4, or whatever it happened to be for whatever job it was, I found it really difficult to have to be somewhere, to be compelled to stay somewhere, that my job would be in jeopardy if I left. That restriction on having to be somewhere for a certain length of time, while my feelings and my depression and everything was all everywhere, that I'm not allowed to rest, that I had to be there for that certain time, without the ability to express my feelings, to deal with my feelings, to have time to myself, to rest, as I said. So that was one of the things I found most challenging about work, was the fact that it was so long while I was feeling all these feelings. Like, a long work day is fine if you're feeling okay, but if you're feeling like shit, and if you're depressed, or even if you're ill with like a cold or whatever, then a long work day, 8 hours or even 6 hours, 5 hours, can be a long time. And for me, hours going by and the sense of time dragging was making my depression worse. And that feeling of being contained and trapped and restricted by a place was really hard for me to deal with. And later on, that's why I quit certain other jobs as well, because I just felt so trapped, and I felt like I wasn't allowed to leave, and I'm not allowed to express myself, and I'm not allowed to I didn't have any freedom about how often I worked and for how long I worked and stuff like that, which was very difficult. Plus, it linked back to this feeling of being trapped inside a mental health ward, which had obviously come from when I was trapped inside a mental health ward. Yeah. So anyway, Jamie, as I was volunteering for this music charity in Slough called Swipe, Jamie said this beautiful little thing one time, where he just said, yeah, you're free to go. You know, this is volunteer. You come when you want. You don't have to. Because I'd also tried to do volunteering stuff before, little bits here and there, and there was always like all these fucking forms to fill in. Like I tried to volunteer at the British Heart Foundation one time, and then there was like this form I had to fill in. I had to go for this interview, and it was all very formal. And by the time they'd said yes, and it was time for my first shift, I was like, I don't want to do it anymore. So I just didn't show up because it just felt such like a trap and too rigid and too formal. And the point is that when you go through something so disastrous or drastic or chaotic, life-changing as being put in a mental health psychiatric ward for an extended period of time because you've got a... All right, let's just admit it. I had psychosis. Okay, by a point in time, I had what can be called psychosis. All right, I didn't experience it like that. I wouldn't have called it that, but let's just call it that for now. Okay, let's just call it that for the moment. Psychosis. I had psychosis for a period of time. According to other people. All right, according to me as well. I know that things weren't... I wasn't interacting with reality in the same way that other people were interacting with reality. That's enough of a definition to say that I had a psychosis going on. Okay, so having gone through such a big chaos moment of being in a psychiatric ward, that is something that changes your perspective irrevocably, because you realise that so much in life is not important, yet it's treated like it is important. Because you see the suffering of people, you see the real pain that people go through internally, mentally, emotionally, whatever, and their behaviour is whack and stuff like that. So you realise, what I realised, that most of life is a fucking joke, and it's a charade, and it's a fucking sham, as in all the acts we go through, all this stuff we do is just, it's kind of there for fun, but we treat it like it's serious and like it's really deep and meaningful or really important and whatever. But when you go through a psychiatric ward and you've gone through this horrible, drastic change in your life, you realise this is bollocks. You know, all these rules and stuff and all this like protocol and all this nonsense and time and work and money, it kind of is bullshit. You know, it's not the be all and end all, and yet all you people are like going mad around it. So what that meant is that I just like, what am I trying to say here? I'm trying to say that the working environment and the workforce or the work ethic or the work climate in this country, at least, so serious about itself that it also doesn't account for people's feelings, basically. Yeah, I don't know what I was trying to actually say there. I was trying to say something like the workforce just doesn't get it when you're not part of that mentality anymore. So I'd got out of that mentality majorly, that that work is majorly important and that money is majorly important, and that that everything is serious and meaningful and stuff. No, what's serious and meaningful is the fact that I want to fucking die because of all the shit I've been through. Okay, you with your little fucking targets and money bonuses, things like that, that's bullshit. It's just not important at all. It might increase your happiness by like 0.3%. You know, it's bollocks, mate. It just didn't mean anything anymore. Yeah, anyway, so I'd kind of got out of that system mentality and realised that the system is not actually all that great, and it doesn't necessarily work to bring happiness. I don't know what I'm trying to say. I still don't know what I'm trying to fucking say. Anyway, so Jamie at Swipe just let me off the hook, really. He just let me come in and go whenever I wanted to. So that was really good. And I just used to show up there for a few hours until I felt like I was getting anxious or felt like I just needed to go home and rest. So I just had that kind of freedom to go in for however long I wanted to. I wasn't trapped. I was free to go at any time, which just was really nice. And it was, I wish that I could have that with the work. And that's how I work now. Is I do what I can based on my feelings. And it works, you know. I do what work I have got inside of me, basically. When I have the feeling to do it, I do it. And I do it properly, you know, I do it well. But I have to feel like it's the right thing for me to do, and that I'm capable of it, and that it's that I want to do whatever it is that I'm trying to do. Yeah. Okay. So then I carried on working. So like after a little period of time of being a volunteer at Swipe, I was offered a job there as a guitar tutor, which I immediately just said, yeah, perfect. You know, perfect. I can play guitar. I can teach guitar. I already did I did a little bit of teaching of guitar when I was in Reading for that 1 month by myself. I taught this girl who was a friend of the guy who I was living with. Yeah, I taught her for a few sessions. So I knew I could do that. And I was like, this is perfect. It ties in with what I do already. It ties in with my interests. You know, it's a good hourly wage as well. It was like £23 an hour or £21 an hour to begin with. So I was like, this is wicked. I only have to do 4 hours per day, and it was once a week. And I get whatever that is, 84 pounds. Yeah. And then it went up to £23. And so I ended up getting £92 or something a week. So that was good. So I went into Swipe every week on a Tuesday, did 4 hours worth of guitar lessons. Not everyone showed up, but I got my check I might have got it every 4 weeks or something, so I'd get all the £90 added up. And I decided to also start doing private lessons. So I would go to people's houses initially. I don't know why I did it that way, because later on I just decided, you can come to me. I think it's because I just wanted to work and I wanted to make it easy for people so they didn't have to leave their house or whatever. I was quite desperate for the money at that time. I just wanted to have the hours and the students. So I did some marketing approaches. Like I got this website made, I got these flyers made. I used to go to business networking meetings. And in fact, I did teach one student from someone who I met at a network meeting. But actually, the things that I got from the networking meetings were contacts for people who could help me with my business. So a person who professionally designed my flyers, which were really good. What else? A guy who did my website for me professionally, which was really good as well. What else? Just some good contacts regarding things. Yeah. Okay. So this was a period in my life that started to become quite active, and I pulled myself slowly out of the depression over a long period of time. And I'd still go through phases where I felt like absolute shit and I wanted to die, wanted to kill myself. But after a period of time, that got less and less. So I worked at Swipe for 4 years, 5 years. During that time, actually, as well, I had a band. I made a new band, which was me, my brother, and my brother's friend from school called Graham. He was on the drums. Graham was on the drums. My brother was on the bass and the guitar, and I was on the bass and guitar. And we used to swap around, playing either bass or guitar, depending on the song that we were playing, because both of us could play both instruments. So, being in a three-piece, it just depended who had written the guitar part, really. So if Owen, my brother, had written the guitar part, then I would play the bass. If I'd written the guitar part, then Owen would play the bass. So it's kind of like my songs and his songs, and then sometimes just joint songs that we'd made together, depending on who was on whatever instrument at the time when we made it. So yeah, so we'd swap between instruments, and Graham was always on drums, although Graham plays bass really well, but he was never on the bass because no one else could play drums. I mean, I could play drums a bit, but I wasn't good enough to be gig ready for it. Fuck that, I was terrible at drums. I mean, I liked it and it was fun, but I was not a drummer, you know, not good. No, I have like a very rudimentary sense of timing, but I'm not good with a click, and I don't have the skills. I really don't have any skills now. Probably I haven't done drumming for ages. Yeah. Anyway, so I got in this band, which was good fun. Although I was still really depressed for the first part of it. I remember picking up Graham in the car and taking him back home and just feeling like shit, and I wanted a rest from the band. Oftentimes I wanted to have a rest, but we couldn't have a rest because we had a schedule to maintain. So we had band practices on Wednesday and Friday, I think it was. Yeah, it was fun. It was really fun, actually. But it's it wasn't the same as when I was in the band Silent Dawn, because when I was in Silent Dawn, I wasn't depressed. But when I was in Wilson to begin with, oh yeah, that was the name of the band. Did I say that? We called it Wilson because it was me and my brother. And in fact, Graham's name has son in it as well. So Ross Wilson, Owen Wilson, Graham Henderson. So we just thought, okay, fine, whatever, it's Wilson. We'll just say the son is from all of our names. Yeah. That's a kind of joke that we made about it. Yeah, so we did that. And we rehearsed twice a week, and we gigged most weeks. No, not most weeks. We gigged maybe a couple of times a month, or 3 or 4 times a month. It just was between sort of 2 and 4 times a month, I suppose. And also just depending on what we could get and what was going on. Sometimes it was a couple of gigs in a week. When we tried this tour, we did this little tour, an acoustic tour thing of radio stations, local radio stations. So we did 5 or 6 different radio stations in a period of a week across the country. So we did one in Wales, we did one in Yorkshire somewhere. I think we did one in, I don't know, we did 5 of them. So wherever they were, we did them. Yeah, which I organised. So I was the organiser of gigs and stuff. I don't know what my brother did. My brother maintained the website and changed the website and uploaded things onto the website and stuff, and kept in touch with our Facebook page. And I was in charge of gigs and sort of organisation of scheduling and stuff. So I kept in charge of the schedule with regard to practices and gigs. So I would fish out for gigs, getting them, organising them, making sure that we were ready for them. My brother kept on top of the social media aspect of our sort of internet presence, basically, with regard to the website and Facebook page. And maybe stuff like MySpace and SoundCloud a little bit as well, I'm not sure. And Graham just showed up for practices and gigs, basically. His job was to show up. And eventually he didn't do that very well, so we ended up trying to kick him out or firing him or whatever and getting another drummer. But the other drummer we got, his name is Pasha, and he did a couple of gigs for us. But Owen wasn't ever really happy with him. I was kind of happy with him to some degree, but I don't know, he would just change the direction of the music, and he had strange ideas about the direction of the band that just didn't feel like family. I mean, Graham, Owen and I felt like a musical family, because, I mean, Owen and I felt like family, and Owen was good friends with Graham and had already done lots of music stuff with Graham at school. I felt like Graham understood my ideas with regard to music quite well. Not always, but most of the time. So it just felt like it worked. You know, we could kind of direct Graham and with his drum beats, and he could make up his own stuff that was really good anyway. So we worked quite well as a team for a number of years, writing and orchestrating. What's that word? Arranging music. So it would be sometimes the case that me or my brother would write a song, but then we would arrange it as a band. So, like, let's say I've written a song, I take it to the band, and then my brother goes, this bit sucks. I'm like, okay, let's change it, and that actually improves the song. And that I wouldn't always necessarily be directorial in the arrangement. I'd just let the other guys arrange their parts around the song that I'd written. So if I've written the guitar and the singing, then they would get to work on making something that fit from their angle, and I would sort of say, yeah, can it be a bit more like this or a bit more like that? Yeah, so we would arrange songs as a band, but then the songwriting was either from me or my brother. But we wouldn't songwrite as a band, really. When we tried to songwrite as a band, things just didn't really go anywhere. We had a couple of songs towards the end that were like jam. They'd come out of just us messing about, but we could never quite pull them together. Like the lyrics never seemed to come out. You know, it would be fun to play it, and then it just like we got a bit into this territory where we didn't know where we were going direction wise in the band anymore. Yeah. Okay, so that was sort of 2009, 2010, 2011. In 2012, so those are the main things I was doing. I had a girlfriend as well, called Gemma, for a couple of years, between I think 2009 and 2011. Yeah, a couple of years with Gemma. So I met Gemma when I went to this thing called Cast, which is Colnbrook Amateur Stage Theatre, I think is what it's called. Amateur dramatics thing, right? So, you know, I kept a hand in, kept my eye in on the drama stuff, even though I didn't do a course on it. I was like, maybe I should do some acting, because I had been watching Friends. Actually, was the inspiration for that move. I'd been watching Friends, and I'd been watching Joey, and thinking, oh, he's an actor, he's pretty cool. You know, I've always been interested in acting. Also, he's getting a lot of sex. I was thinking like, I need a girlfriend. You know, maybe I should go and do some acting in a community thing. I don't know where this came up from. I must have just Googled acting classes or something in Slough or whatever, or in Langley, and it came up, Colnbrook. So I went to that place and did the Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. It wasn't a pantomime, but it was a musical version. So they'd done some, stuck in some contemporary Christmas songs and whatever. So yeah, so I did that and met Gemma there, and we got on well. She was younger than me again. She was like 17 when we met, and I was 23. Yeah, but it was fine actually. I didn't really fancy her, if I'm honest. I didn't fancy her in the face, but again, I was desperate and just needed someone to be with, so I went out with Gemma. And she was a nice person. She was a good girl. She was a fun person, funny person, clever, intelligent, you know, warm, kind person. I just didn't fancy her, really. I just didn't find her attractive. She was a bit chubby. I just didn't find her attractive in the face. Not really. I mean, you know, I kind of forced myself to pretend to fancy her, but I didn't really fancy her. I don't think I was really in the place either. I wasn't in a good place emotionally to have a girlfriend. I was not a good boyfriend. I was a workaholic at that point. I was working on my band and on the guitar teaching, just all hours of the day. I think probably just because I was aware that if I could work, that I could push the depression out. If I could just distract myself by working, it would help the depression go away, which did actually work, you know. Yeah, so I was with this girl called Gemma, and it was alright. We went camping one time. She freaked out on the way home because we were stuck in traffic for ages, and she got claustrophobic and had a panic attack. Yeah. But yeah, it was alright. It was all right relationship. It started to get a bit more what do you call it? Tricky when she moved in. Also, she found some journals of mine, which had entries of me. She always raided my journals, which really pissed me off, because I didn't feel like I had any privacy. I couldn't have my own private thoughts and my own private feelings, my own private decisions and stuff. I think it's important in a relationship to have your own thoughts and feelings first, and to know how you feel and what you think, so that, like, then you can communicate with another person. If you have self-knowledge, if you have a self-understanding, and if you need to have a space to be able to listen to yourself and to know how you feel. Um, and I didn't feel like I had that space with Gemma because she was constantly invading my privacy, looking at my journal entries and stuff and whatever. So I couldn't even work out how I felt about her. And every time she would find something, it'd always be negative anyway. I was always saying negative things about her, about how I didn't find her attractive, how, how I didn't want to be with her and stuff. And eventually I sort of acted on that and decided that, okay, yeah, maybe I should listen to these thoughts, because that tends to happen. I think about stuff for ages and I think, oh, well, maybe that's just negative thinking. And then if that just keeps coming back and back and back and it's the same thing every time, then I start thinking, okay, I should pay attention to that. So that same thing happened actually with regard to the guitar teaching that I was doing. So this sort of paying attention to myself, and listening to my inner thinking, I don't know where I got that idea from. I think I just read it somewhere. I was reading self-help books still to try and maintain my mental health and improve my mental health. So somewhere I must have picked up the idea, okay, listen to yourself, listen to your internal dialogue, listen to what's going on inside you, and pay attention to it. And so I didn't specifically, explicitly cheat on Gemma, but I broke up with her. And during the time that I was broken up with her, I went out with this other girl, who I fancied, who fancied me, who I'd been flirting with on the set of the play we were doing together. She was also part of the drama group. This new girl who'd come in, she'd come in slightly later than everyone else, and her name was Margot, and she was attractive. She was a bit older, more mature. She was 27, I was 23. She was okay with me being 23. She still found me attractive. I found her attractive. She was kind of more suitable for me compared with Gemma, because she was sort of just that bit older, and Gemma was like 17 or 18 at the time, which wasn't good, and I felt bad about that. I felt like a pedo, honestly. I felt like a pedo. I felt, this isn't quite right. But Gemma was mad about me. She was really obsessed about me and clingy, really, really clingy, in a teenage kind of way. And so I broke up with Gemma and then went out with Margot, like went on a date or something, and went around to hers and brought her flowers and stuff. And we got naked and tried to do some stuff, but I couldn't get a boner for her. Now at that time, actually, there was something going on with my medication where I couldn't get a boner for anyone often. My sexual response was really not doing anything, and so I think that the reason I couldn't get a boner for Margot was because I felt bad about Gemma, but also I had this medication thing going on where I found it difficult to get a boner anyway. And what happened was I looked down the side effects of the medication that I was taking, and I realized that impotence or like erectile dysfunction was one of the side effects of the thing. So I asked my doctor to, I was quite embarrassed about it, but I asked my doctor to change me to a different medication because I was having this side effect. I think I had to go and have a medical examination of my penis just to check if it was okay first, which was kind of embarrassing because I swear that the doctor went like that to me when he was fondling my balls, which was weird. He went, and I went, and he also said, "Do your breasts leak?" And I was like, "Breasts? I'm a man." He said, yeah, well, that's just what we call it, medical definition, whatever, breast. No, they don't leak. I'm a man. Anyway, do they secrete an oily pus? No. Anyway, so yeah, that brings me on to another point, which was something else I started doing around that time, was stand-up comedy courses. So I'd already done stand-up comedy courses previously. I don't know when and where and how, but before I'd got sectioned, I'd done a course in music, a music production course, so like a 10-week music production course, and a 12-week, I think it's 12 weeks, yeah, 6 or 12 week stand-up comedy course. Both of those were in London, and both of them felt like they were quite close to each other, as in like in terms of like I did one course and then I did the other one fairly soon afterwards. So that was back in 2008, I think, or 2007, not sure. But I did those courses, and then so like later again, well, like 2010 probably, I started doing a stand-up comedy course with this guy called Chris Head, and he did this course in London, which was some number of weeks, 10 weeks, 12 weeks, 9 weeks, I don't know, a number of weeks, for a few hours on an evening in the week, maybe Wednesdays or something. And then it led up to a showcase, which is what they always do at these comedy courses. They always do a showcase at the end, which is a little gig where all the people who were on the course get to do a 5-minute open spot, a 5-minute set in front of a real audience of friends and family and whoever wants to come. Okay, open. It was an open gig. It's not like a closed gig, so anyone could come. Yeah, so I was doing that, and in my band as well. And I occasionally would put some of my stand-up comedy in my patter on the microphone when I was in the band, which just didn't go down well at all. It just didn't go down at all. It just didn't. People didn't understand why I was trying to tell weird, zany, bizarre jokes on a rock gig microphone thing. They're just like, huh? It was out of context. I was speaking like from one context and trying to cross match it to another context, and it just didn't work because people were there for you to go, "Way, you ready to have fun? You want to get in gig music? Whoa, you having a good time?" Bleh. And I was going, "So I gave some mushrooms to a tramp the other day, just regular button mushrooms, nothing psychedelic." And I just said, "There you go, trampy." He wanted £1. I gave him some mushrooms. There you go. That was one of my jokes. Yeah, I thought that was funny. Anyway, so I was like trying to use my stand-up as part of my patter in between gigs. Not in between gigs, in between songs. It just didn't work at all. It was just very silly. Yeah, okay. So that was good, actually, doing that stand-up comedy course. I did it again the next year, I think. Yeah, anyway, so yeah, I was saying about, I went out with Margot briefly, couldn't get it up, got my medication changed, that sorted my dick out. Okay, so that's fine. So my dick went back up for Gemma after, so it was confusing time where basically I broke up with Gemma so that I could then worked on Margot, that didn't go anywhere, and then Gemma and I went back out because basically the thing with Margot just didn't work. And Gemma tried persuading me to go back with her. So I did. She seduced me. She had a shower and then came into my room and went like that and showed me her tits, and then we had sex and stuff. So she manipulated me back into bed, basically, and then we carried on our relationship. But it was never quite the same after that because she couldn't trust me because of this whole Margot thing. So yeah, but she still moved in with me, and within, I don't know, a month or two of her moving in, I'd kicked her out and broken up with her. Because how that happened was my brother and I were doing open mic sessions still. So not only were we doing band gigs, we were also doing open mic nights with me and him together, just singing and playing acoustic guitar each. And at one of those, it was at this place called the Swan. There's a pub in Beaconsfield called the Swan, which is still going, and I think they still have an open mic night on Thursday there. I'm not sure, but Yeah, it's been going for ages. The guy there, James Henton, was the guy who was running it. I don't know if he's still running it anymore, but he used to do loads of stuff around that area in High Wycombe and Beaconsfield, with regard to live music, open mics and stuff. Yeah. Anyway, so Owen and I went to do a open mic slot at the Swan in Beaconsfield, and there everyone was hot, as in all the women there were extremely attractive. Not all of them, but okay, a hell of a lot of women who were there were incredibly attractive, beautiful women. There was a high percentage of au pairs from places like Germany, Belgium, France, Spain, everywhere. So these were girls who were like 18 years old, really, really attractive European girls. And then just, I don't know why, but everyone in Beaconsfield is incredibly attractive. All the women are attractive in Beaconsfield, pretty much. So we went there. We didn't know this, but when we got there, we were like, whoa, this is amazing. There are these really attractive girls here. Okay, and we met this girl called Lucina. Yeah, that's her name, Lucina. She was there with her sister, I believe, or someone, or a friend. I think it was her sister. I don't know, or a friend. A friend. Okay, I fancied her. I don't think she fancied me, but she liked our music and wanted to join with us in a singing capacity to make a kind of trio or a duo. Because my brother was at uni at that time in Loughborough doing product design or materials and product design or something. Materials engineering. I'm not sure what it's called, what he did honestly, but yeah. So we met Lucina that first night, and it was like this kind of eye-opening experience because I'd only gone out with Gemma really because I was like depressed, desperate, low self-esteem, needed a girlfriend, was feeling shit because I didn't have a girlfriend. She was there. She was a nice person. She was a good person. She was an intelligent person, fun person, but didn't find her attractive. And then I found this girl, Lucina, who was the first girl who I'd found genuinely attractive. Like I fancied the pants off her. I thought she was the most beautiful girl I'd ever seen at that point. Right. So, so I met this girl, Lucina, and that really made me consider breaking up with Gemma properly because I hadn't really thought that there were any other options. I mean, I tried going out with Margot, but that didn't work. And I just didn't want to be with Gemma. You know, Gemma wanted to tie me into a relationship, and I didn't find her attractive enough to want to be in a full-time, long-term, relationship, not full-time. We'd already been together for about 2 years. I'd only wanted it to be for like 1 year maximum. And I'd said that to her, and I think she found that really hard to deal with, the fact that I'd known and that I only wanted to be with her for like 1 year. And I don't think kind of girls like that when you're like, you know what you want from a relationship and you know that it's time-based and it's not going to last forever. Anyway, so I told her that, and she was trying to work on me to make it into a long-term relationship, and I kind of let it go on for a while, longer than the year. I mean, I let it go on for about 2 years, but then it was getting to the point where I'm like, nah, this is enough. You know, she'd moved in, and I think because she wanted to, or we wanted it to, and then things were going worse because she had moved in, because I didn't feel I had the space and stuff, and it just got more claustrophobic again there, and like we started snapping at each other and we were getting itchy and bitchy at each other. Yeah, and then okay, yeah, so then I met Lucina, and that really changed my whole thing, because I was like, oh my god, I really fancy this person, and the person I'm in a relationship with, I haven't ever properly fancied her. I mean, yeah, she's okay, but I'd never really fancied her fully. And now I'm being confronted with this really attractive girl who was my age, or more my age at least, just like maybe, yeah, I think she was actually exactly the same age as me, which would have been 24 or 25 by that point. And whether or not she fancied me, something just changed, and I realised there are other people out there. There are plenty more fish in the sea. You know, I was like, okay, I'm not actually happy in the relationship with Gemma. I don't really want to be with her. I don't really fancy her, and I have wanted to get out of this relationship for a while. And I just came to this decision fairly shortly after meeting Lucina and falling in love with her, that I just remember like lying in my bed, having a bit of time to myself, and just kind of thinking, I just kind of hit this resolution point of, I'm going to break up with Gemma. And it's something weird happens when you actually know exactly what you feel or think, and you hit this resolution moment, because it's like something else takes control. So I sort of surrendered to that decision, and I think that I had made it, I knew it clearly enough in myself to be able to communicate that in such a way that it was a binding decision. Binding, you know, an effective decision. So there are times when I have tried to break up with people and it hasn't worked, because there's always been a sense of doubt or insecurity or uncertainty, in myself about it. But when I'm actually certain about something, that this is the time to change or do such and such or break up with a person, that has a binding power to it, that has a decisive power to it, that's a kind of no-go back. There's a no going back sense from that, where I make a decision. So I made that decision, and I knew that this was right, and I broke up with Gemma. And I don't know exactly what I said, but I think I just sort of told the truth, that I didn't want to be with her anymore, or that the relationship wasn't working, and that it was going to be over, that it was over. And because I knew inside that was right for me, or right for the whole thing, actually, it tends to be that it has to feel like it's kind of, unless it's really, really bad for me, I tend to feel like it has to fit the situation as a whole. The situation as a whole is a reflection of, as in, I make a decision in myself when it feels like it is the right time for that situation to change, not just for me, but for the situation to change. Yeah. So I felt like this is the time it needs to change. Yes, there's a selfish aspect too, but I also was aware that the relationship wasn't working anymore from either of our ends, and I was the one who needed to make the decision, because I was the one who had these feelings that were, I needed to break up with her. I needed to break up with her, so I broke up with her. She had a panic attack. She freaked out. She couldn't sleep the first night. She was just going mad. Then the next day she had the panic attack, and we called the paramedics because we couldn't calm her down. The paramedics spoke to her and calmed her down. And eventually we persuaded her to go into hospital in Prospect Park to have some, like, just a short stay in there, so that she could get through the mental health system. It's just quicker to go to A&E, get admitted to hospital for depression or for something. Then after spending a bit of time in a hospital environment, you're then like in the system, so you can get access to the medications easily, access to therapy easily. You know, it's just very easy once you've gone through this first little bit of stuff. So we were saying to her, me and my dad, because obviously I'd been through it, that look, if you can get in on the mental health system, then it's just there for you, and you've got this, like, really, it is a good support system. I didn't like it at the time, but it's what you need. So you have this support system of all different kinds of professionals and helpers who can help you. And it's actually kind of more difficult to do it. It's slower. It's actually slower to do it through the GP, and get stuff done in the community. But if you can just get yourself, you don't have to be sectioned, but you can voluntarily admit yourself into hospital because you're so distressed, that then you can get the help that you need very much quicker than if you were to go through your GP and then go through referrals and talk to people maybe 1 week, 2 weeks later, whatever. It's just, madness. So she got into hospital, and I went and saw her a couple of times while she was in there. Um, yeah, and I felt like shit for doing that but it's not my fault, It's not my fault that I broke up with her, and that's her own. That belongs to her. Okay, her feelings and issues belong to her. My decision belongs to me, and I did what I had to do, and I still cared about her, and I wanted the best for her, but I had to break up the relationship. Um, yeah, so it's hard though. Okay, so Gemma and I broke up. I tried to pursue Lucina, but she wasn't interested, and I was like well gutted about that. But that whole thing had set me on a new path with regard to women. Then I met this girl called Marina, who was a German au pair. She was 18, and we went out for 8 months. I was still doing all my band stuff and all my guitar teaching stuff. And yeah, so is that up to 2014 yet? No, not quite yet. Went out with her. I did this thing in 2012 for the Olympics, this celebration thing called the Tree of Light, which I was a guitarist for, which was just a performance of about an hour or so of this whack, weird world music type of stuff that was really hard to rehearse for, because it was really testing my musical capabilities, because it was all weird structures and weird time signatures and like irregular changes. So like 1 bar of this, then 5 bars of that, then 3 bars of this, then a random half bar here or something else. It's just weird how the guy had constructed it. But I did okay. I messed it up a little bit on the night, on this one particular thing where I just didn't know the timing without a click, without someone telling me when it was coming. I still couldn't get it. Yeah, anyway, that was quite fun. And it was the biggest gig I'd ever done, because there was like 10,000 people on one night and 20,000 people on another night. Although it didn't feel like that, because they're a bit far away, and I don't know, 10,000 people in a massive field that's way bigger than 10,000 people's worth just doesn't feel like very much. 20,000 people also didn't feel like very much, but it was good. Yeah, it was really fun, actually. A really great experience doing that. I should probably talk more about that on another occasion. What else? Okay. I was still doing gigs with the band. That was going well. Still doing guitar teaching. And then, must have been 2013 or so, maybe 2012, 2013, that kind of time, I started having some deeper therapy. I had been having therapy with the mental health services, some cognitive behavioural therapy, which I had for about 3 years. Soon after I came out of hospital, from 2009, 2010, 2011, with this person, with this therapist, who I felt was a bit weak, but at least I had something to do, somewhere to go to talk about stuff. Better than nothing. I did kind of look forward to it, but I always felt like I came away with nothing changed, nothing improved. But I felt like I needed to go anyway, because it was something to be able to talk about my stuff with someone, even though it wasn't really helping. But I felt like I had to go. I needed to go for my own mental sanity, right? So I decided to go for some deeper therapy. I'd been reading stuff about hypnotherapy and inner child stuff, and adult children with dysfunctional families, stuff like that. And I found this lady on the internet called Tracy, who was a therapist, who had inner child work as one of her major things on there. And I just went and had some sessions with her, which was the first time that I really started to look at my past, and the first time I really felt validated for my past as well. So one of the things that she said was, she was an empath as well, by the way. So she said something like how people can retreat into the psychosis when their authentic self is not validated, or they don't feel accepted or something. They can be pushed into a psychosis. out of stress or whatever. And I felt for the first time that someone got it, that someone understood that it wasn't this madness thing, that this label that I'd been given of psychosis was really damaging. And I was talking about things like that, about being labelled and why I was depressed and why my life I felt like it wasn't really working properly and stuff. Yeah. So that was the first time that I started to make any kind of actual breakthroughs in my mental health, where I started to get my feelings back. I started to cry again. Before I'd been numb and depressed in a background way. Even when I wasn't suicidal, I still had a background feeling of numbness and depression. Yeah, so Tracy really started to help. Yeah. And then I was doing it in London. She operated from London, and I found that that was too much effort and expensive to get to London. And so we started doing it on Skype, and then I just didn't feel like it was really the same. You know, you didn't get that feeling of connection, that feeling of presence, of someone being there to actually help you in person. And there was like issues with the thing flipping around, like the screen would flip around occasionally, or it cut out or whatever, and it's just weird. So I decided, okay, I'm not going to stop going to see her. And then I went to see this counsellor in Datchet called Jan, and again started to have more breakthroughs, started to really look at my childhood a bit more, how I felt about my life, how I felt like I hadn't been recognised in my life, and how I was struggling to be myself, and I was just lost, and that no one understood me and no one got me, and how difficult that was. And I found myself again, basically, in those therapy sessions with Jan. I felt loved, I felt cared for, I felt accepted, I felt encouraged, and I found myself again. I found my true self, my true, genuine self, about who I was, how I felt, and what I wanted to do. And I started getting invested again in my artwork and in my music in a new way, in a way that was authentic, that was about me, that was from me, that was about my feelings, that was about my ideas, not just sort of like random stuff. You know, my lyrics had been kind of random for a while and hadn't really been doing any artwork, but I just connected with myself in a way that was deeper and new and fresh and exciting to me. And yeah, and then I stopped having therapy with Jan, I think mainly because I couldn't afford it, and I think I felt betrayed at one point as well. Like, I couldn't afford it, or I felt I couldn't afford it, and she said at one point that she's not like other therapists and she would do it for free. And then I asked her, well, will you do it for free then? She went, no. So she kind of, I felt betrayed, and so I didn't go back to her anymore. But looking back at it, I think I kind of overreacted, honestly. Anyway, so that about brings us up to 2014. Yeah. At which point I decided to give up, wean myself off from medications. I got the consultant psychiatrist changed, because it had been changed already, to someone who was just no good, and I got changed to someone who was better, who actually listened. And I got the antipsychotic medications reduced down by her, as in, you know, officially, yeah. So we got reduced that down from 15 milligrams of aripiprazole to 10 milligrams of aripiprazole to 5 milligrams of aripiprazole, and then nothing. And I was off those for a while. Then I decided to take myself off the antidepressants without any advice from the mental professional, because I thought, like, I could ask them, but they'll probably just say no, or they'll probably say, oh, do it over a period. You know, I think they wanted me to do it like after 6 months more, and I was like, I'm not going to wait that long, I'm just going to do it myself. because I was starting to get concerned about the long-term negative side effects of being on. They're like they're psychotropic drugs in that they affect your brain chemistry. I was just concerned about the long-term potential side effects of being on medication for like brain chemical medication. I just didn't want to perhaps increase my risk of dementia or Alzheimer's or whatever by being on medication for so long. So I wanted to get off it, and also I was realizing that I felt numb on antidepressants, so I wanted to get off them. So I did that myself, and I wrote out a schedule for myself on a spreadsheet about how much to take of each pill, and staggering it, like breaking it down to have less and less and less over a period of a month. And I had some strange and uncomfortable and distressing side effects, or like withdrawal effects of coming off antidepressants. My body went every 10 seconds, which was really strange. Like some sort of nerve shock thing went up my body, like in my brain, in the back of my neck, and like up my spine. It happened, to begin with, it happened like every 10-15 seconds or so. Then it sort of started to lessen. And then finally it stopped happening completely. But it was really an odd sensation. And an uncomfortable, kind of painful sensation, but painful in a very subtle way, very strange, painful feelings, like very deep inside your brain, like bizarre. Yeah, but then, so come 2014, the beginning of 2014. Oh yeah, by the way, I'd had a relationship with this girl for like 4 months called Paulina. She was Polish. I'd broken up with Marina after 8 months. Then I went out with this girl called Paulina, who I found online on some dating site called Free Dating UK, I think. freedating.co.uk. We got along. We went out. We had some sex. It was good. I still didn't find her particularly attractive. Something about her nose. Just didn't find her attractive. Fully attractive, anyway. I just went out with her again because I was kind of desperate. Needed a relationship. Wanted a relationship. Liked her as a person, but then she was really whiny. And then I found out, after going into more depth in our relationship, that she was racist and homophobic and against German people. Well, you can understand that from the war angle. But yeah, she was just very... she's just bigoted against lots of different people, and I found that intolerable. And I found that, like, I didn't want to be with someone who was homophobic, racist, and whiny, and against German people, because I'd been out with a German girl. It was my last girlfriend, and I'm like, there's nothing wrong with Germans. They're not bad just because they're German, you know. Yeah, and I'd been gay, and she was like homophobic about, or just hated this gay guy she worked with because he was gay. And I'm like, oh, okay, I can't really be with you because you're a bit too. Your emotional views are not very accepting of other people. And she was racist against black people as well. Like, oh, this black guy at work. I'm like, what? You don't like him because he's black? That's ridiculous. So she just didn't like everyone. Probably didn't like Indian people as well, I think. Or brown people. Yeah, brown people, black people. Yeah. So I was like, oh, can't be with you. And then she found out about my past history from mental health stuff, because I hadn't told her explicitly to begin with, because by that point I just kind of wanted to get away from it. I'd been doing these documentaries and radio shows about it and stuff, like I'd been doing conferences at mental health conferences, and I've been doing talks at schools about psychosis and stuff, and I'd done this BBC Three documentary on my condition, psychosis, that I'd had. And I did this advert for Rethink Mental Illness called Time to Change. Just got this little badge there for Rethink with me and my dad. Oops, wrong way around. Sorry. So I've done this advert, put it there, for that. and then I'd done this BBC Three documentary, as I was saying, and that was about to come out, and I told her about it just before it was about to come out on TV. And then when it did come out on TV and she watched it, she freaked out because some of the stuff in that documentary was like the video of me putting the paint on the walls and some sound clips of me having a spaz out, mental breakdown, whatever, shouting and screaming thing, threatening to put a knife to my throat and stuff like that. So she heard that stuff and saw that stuff, and she just freaked out basically. And she was like, "I don't know if I can trust you, and I don't know if I want to be with you, and I need some time to think about this." And then we carried on after that point. And yeah, it was actually fine. She dealt with it. She got over it. And towards the end of our relationship, things were starting to get a bit deeper. But I was going through again a really rough period with my family. Like I felt like I wasn't being respected and heard and listened to, and didn't have my own life in the family situation. So we were having family therapy as well, I think, at that point. And Paulina just said something like, "Why don't you be more positive, man?" And I was like, "You just don't understand. That's the wrong thing to say to me, you know. If you knew me, or if you were a caring person, you'd know that you can't just do the whole be positive thing with me, because I've been through a hell of a lot of fucking shit. And the be positive thing just comes off as callous and uncaring and kind of cruel to someone who's going through this very deep, difficult period. And for someone to just say, why are you being negative all the time? You know, why don't you be more positive? And I'm like, you just don't care, do you? You haven't listened to me either. And you know, it's not as easy as just being positive sometimes. So that was one reason I broke up with her. Another reason was she just wasn't, well, she was racist, as I said. She was homophobic. She wasn't really aware of her feelings either. And I was going through therapy, and I started going through all these groups on Codependence Anonymous, UA, Under Earners Anonymous, DA, Debtors Anonymous. And I think I was having family therapy. I was also going to group therapy off my own bat. Yeah. So everything was quite group based at that time. The therapy I was having. And it was focusing on feelings and getting to grips with your responses about things, you know, so looking at your experiences. And it's not like analysing them, it's sort of exploring. You explore things and you pull things out. So you might say something like, I remember saying in like group therapy, I'm here basically because I really have difficulty with work situations. I keep quitting work situations. And then the therapist guy would say, so what is that about for you, Ross? And I'd say, well, I don't know. I always feel this sense of dread when I'm approaching a work situation. I always feel like that I'm going to be trapped, or that I feel like I can't be myself, or I need to get away and stuff. And so the other people listen and whatever, and they might ask you questions and stuff. Or they'll talk about something that's relevant to them. And it's supposed to be supportive. Didn't find it supportive on occasion. Yeah, and anyway, so I was getting into things like feelings and healing my inner child, and finding out my authentic desires and stuff, and so my feelings, my needs, and my wants. And I was exploring all this stuff, and I was like trying to do some of the exercises with Paulina, like we do the I feel, I need, I want exercise, and where you just state, you kind of feel into yourself and think to yourself, what do I feel, what do I need, and what do I want in any situation, or right now, how am I feeling, what do I feel I need, and what do I want. It's just a kind of self-awareness exercise to keep yourself in touch with who you are, and to keep yourself above board, you know, to keep yourself in the ability to fulfill your needs and to get your desires met, and to honour your feelings. You need to be aware of them. Yeah. So I was doing these exercises with her, and she just kind of like, she didn't know what her feelings were. She never really knew what her feelings were, or her needs. She was like, I don't know, I just don't know. And so she was really cut off from her feelings. Then she was whiny as well. And I found like every time I would be hanging around with her, as in we'd be on our dates or whatever, doing our stuff, having our girlfriend boyfriend time, I found this sense of a stone in my heart, this stone in the pit of my stomach, and the stone in my chest, just pain. And I also felt like I was being used for sex. She was so sex oriented. I'd be like, yeah, so we can do. She taught me some Polish. I was like, yeah, so maybe we can do some Polish stuff. And then she'd be like, yeah, and the sex. And I was like, yeah, okay, yeah, no, the sex is good. The sex was good. The sex was good, right? But it was always like, yeah, and the sex, the sex, the sex. And I was like, yeah, okay, but I actually, I strangely, for once in my life, wanted a relationship to be about more than just the sex. And she was like, really, really only about the sex for a while. And it was like to the point where I felt, this is abusive, man. This is like, I'm being used here just for sex. I felt abandoned by her because she was just wanting sex mainly, and I felt like it was cutting into me in some way, that she was so just about sex, and I wanted something deeper. I wanted something more meaningful. I wanted something with a deeper connection. And she was like very sex based, and I actually, for the first time in my life, I'd felt that was too aggressive for me, and I wanted something more feeling based and more truth based, deeper. Yeah. So why did I break up with her though specifically? I just think it was because of this feeling that I kept getting around her. Every time I was around her, I felt this feeling in my chest, this sinking feeling. And I was like, I think it's you. I think it's being with you actually. And I can't do it anymore. I gotta break up with you. I did it over the phone. Whatever, my life's been hard. Give me a break. Broke up with her over the phone. She just said, okay, I've got to go. And just spoke to her a little bit on email after that. But I just wanted her to acknowledge the relationship. And finally I got some acknowledgement. I just wanted to kind of her to talk to me like a normal human being. And she finally did, and then that was the end of it. I randomly connected with her like a year or so, or a year or two ago on some dating app. Just said hi. She said, hi, how's it going? I'm like, yeah, fine. Okay, bye. That was it. So that's that done. That's closure for you. Yeah. Okay, so I broke up with her. I think it was 2013 that I was doing this counselling skills course as well. And I went out with this girl. It must have been after Paulina. I went out with her for like a month. Her name was Claire. And she was a girl on my counselling course. And I fancied her. I spent so much time just staring at her boobs from across the way, because she always wore these tops that were like, she was slim, but her tops, she wore these like, they weren't like tight fitting, like they were clutching her, but they were just very revealing. Like, they didn't show any of her skin, but they just showed the contour of her boobs really nice, and they looked reasonably sized. It was actually misleading because she was wearing push-up bra type things, or padded bras, but she had auburn hair like mine, and she was a sweet girl. She was quite quiet, quite sort of shy and giggly, but she was a sweet, and she was an intelligent girl as well. She was a bit older than me though. I think she was like, if I was like 26 or 27, then she was 34 or 33, something like that. So she felt a bit weird about it, going out with a younger guy, but she was okay with it. And we got to know each other. We went out on some dates, and then started shagging, started going around to hers. She came around to mine once or twice, I think. I didn't feel comfortable to stay over. And she was the last girl who I had any relationship with, a sense of girlfriend and boyfriend properly. So with Paulina, Paulina was the last girl. So Paulina was after Paulina, or might have been after Claire actually, that I said, okay, I'm not having any more relationships. I think it was after Paulina I'd said that I'm not going to have any more relationships for a while. I'm just going to be single. I'm just going to have sex. I'm going to have fun. I can't deal. This is another aspect of being with Paulina. I felt like I was playing the relationship role, where I wasn't being myself. I was saying what I was supposed to say. So I'd have the sort of thought of what I really thought and what I really felt, and then oftentimes I wouldn't say what I really thought, what I really felt. I'd say the dumbed down or cleaned up version of it. So I was always holding something back and not being fully myself. Therefore, not being fully honest with anyone. So I just didn't want to be that inauthentic person anymore in relationships. And so Paulina was the last girl who I did that with, where I compromised my inner self, basically. Yeah, so it's about compromising or changing or altering or pretending or trying to please someone else. Whilst sacrificing the real truth. And it wasn't like it was a major deal, but I could feel the inconsistency between how I was behaving, what I was saying, and what I really thought and what I really felt. So that inconsistency was reflecting back to me as a kind of sense of discontent. I wasn't content, and I was unhappy with the fact that there was a disconnect between how I was behaving and what I was saying, and this level beneath that where I felt slightly differently to how I expressed that I felt. I thought slightly differently to what I expressed that I thought. I wanted differently to what I said I wanted. I was compromising and making it was like a presentation of myself. Yeah, it was a presentation. So I was presenting myself. It's like a performance of myself, performing a role of myself rather than just being actually genuine. So I was performing the relationship version of myself. It's just a kind of relationship role that isn't fully genuine. It's like you do what you think the other person wants. It's kind of passive aggressive in a way. You say what the other person thinks. You say what you think the other person wants to hear. That thing. So I was doing that, and I was aware of it, and I was like, this is not right. I don't feel really true and honest here right now. So that was another reason I broke up with Paulina. But also, not because that was her fault, because I knew that I needed to do it for myself to get into a genuine place in relationships. Which makes me feel good about my situation now, actually, because I'm just genuine with everyone, I think. I haven't even really thought about that for ages. Yeah, it's weird. I'm in such a different mindset to where I was before. Anyway, so I decided after Paulina that I wasn't going to play relationship roles anymore. I wasn't going to be in a relationship either, because I realised that being in a relationship to me at that time felt like a trap. It felt like somewhere where I couldn't fully be myself. And I knew that I wasn't really, I didn't really know myself at that point in time. Like, I didn't know myself as myself. And I kept getting into relationships when I didn't fully know who I was anyway, first. So that's why this disconnect was happening, this kind of feeling where I wasn't being fully honest with people, because initially I didn't even really know what my full honesty was, because I was just constantly acting in a way that was like linked to my self-image, or trying to appease a person, or trying to avoid conflict. And so I decided after Paulina, that's it, no more relationships for a while. I'm just going to be single and have sex, and that is, I'm going to be upfront with people as well. I'm going to be honest about that. But it's just going to be one night stands and flings and stuff, so that I could just kind of get my sexual needs met, without the commitment aspect, so I could find myself and learn who I was, and get in touch with and stay in touch with who I was, because I felt like I needed to kind of build a background foundation of self-knowledge and self-reliance and self-understanding, self-trust, self-honesty, and self-awareness as well. So I needed to have that there very solidly before I could then move into a relationship. I was quite clear that there was no point in me trying to get into a relationship when I wasn't mature to myself. I wasn't mature in knowing who I was. Because all relationships that I had been in, one of the major reasons that they had crumbled was because there was always a sense that there's something that I was holding back, that wasn't being true, that wasn't being honest. Not fully honest, anyway. So yeah, so I did that. And I think that kind of takes us up to the 2014 point. So Claire, important point though. My mum and dad broke up. My mum and dad divorced. Because we were having family therapy, it came out that my mum had had an affair with my dad some years earlier. My dad hadn't been happy for a long time in the relationship. My dad told me and my brother, that they had just been living together as friends for the past 3 years, that they weren't really in love anymore, and that he wanted to break up with her, and that they were going to get a divorce. Then they did get a divorce, and my dad moved out and moved into Windsor. So that was a big change. And it was at that point, I was going out with Claire at that point when this all happened. And just, I couldn't deal with it, and I couldn't understand relationships anymore. I felt like my whole life with regard to relationships had been a betrayal. I felt like my whole childhood had been a sham. My teenage years had been a sham as well. All the things I thought were true previously about the fact that my parents were just like using my illness as a way to distract themselves from their marriage that was failing suddenly became relevant again, and I was validated for that. I was thinking, I fucking knew it, that they were just triangulating me in their fucking marriage, that they couldn't face each other, so they were just distracting themselves by fixating upon me and putting all their negative attention into me instead. So making my life a fucking misery because they couldn't fucking look at their own fucking lives and look at their own fucking marriage. So they just focused all their attention on me and made me into the ill child and put all their like emotional toxicity into me, where it should be directed at each other, or it should just be broken apart and they should move on from each other and fucking commit to themselves and be honest, integrity-based individuals, which they didn't fucking do until my dad finally had the fucking balls to actually look at himself and look at his feelings and decide to leave my mum, which I wish had happened a lot sooner. I wish it had happened before I got diagnosed with anything, because I think that their marriage was a significant contributor to why my emotional life was so fucked. Because they didn't communicate with each other, because they communicated through me and my brother. It was just a cold, bickering relationship that they had. It wasn't a warm, loving relationship. They had horrible arguments often. And then they started using me as a distraction. That's how I felt anyway. So that was horrible. So I felt betrayed when I felt like my whole life up until that point had been or my whole idea of my family and my parents' relationship had been in denial or been in hiding. And so my dad had been hiding all this stuff from me. They hadn't been honest with me. We didn't know about the affair. It's just been this whole fucking cover-up sham thing. So when I'd said in previous videos that the family was in denial, the family was in major denial. My dad didn't want to be with my mum. My mum had cheated on him. I think with more than one person, actually. I think only one person got put down on the divorce papers, who was an unknown person. They didn't specify who it was, but I think there was more than one occasion. There was more than one partner that my mum cheated on my dad with. So, fuck them both for just never telling me and for making my life based upon false assumptions, like the assumptions that my parents loved each other, the assumption that things were okay, the assumption that they wanted to be together, and it's just all fucking lies. It just wasn't true. And so I was with Claire at that time, and we'd been going out for like a month, and I just couldn't handle it. I think the way I see it is that when my parents divorced or broke up, whatever, when the news dropped about that was going to happen, just my whole idea of relationships just went, okay, I don't know why am I in a relationship? I don't know what I'm doing, with Claire. What the hell, everything is just too much. It's too much going on. I can't be in a relationship. I don't understand relationships anymore. This massive relationship in my life, the most important relationship around me, my parents' relationship with each other, has just suddenly dissolved, disintegrated, and apparently had been in a state of fuckedness for a long time without me even fucking knowing, kind of vaguely on the outskirts of my awareness, that I was kind of aware that something wasn't very good with them. I knew they didn't communicate with each other, but I didn't know the extent to which their relationship was dead. That was a good sentence. Yeah. So my mind was blown about relationships, and that was when I started my sexual rampage. I mean, I'd already decided to kind of like not call something a relationship by that point. And Claire was like at the beginning of my sexual rampage. But then I sort of acquiesced a little bit and decided, okay, yeah, we can be boyfriend and girlfriend. But then my parents broke up, and that just went, that's it. Fuck relationships. Yeah. All right. That is 2014. That is the end of the story. I'm going to go have therapy instead. There you go. What do you think? That's 2014. That's 3 hours worth of video. Motherfuckers. And the sock puppets still are not ready yet. I'm glad I said all that shit. How am I going to ever listen to this back though? 3 hours, man. I think I need therapy now. Don't I? Maybe I should do a bit between 2014 and now. I feel like I need to get to the present day. I need to clear up the story that gets me to why am I living with my mum? Why don't I have a job anymore? How long have I not had a job for since, I forget now, 2015? No. 2013? 2013 is the last time I actually had a job. 6 years. 6 years. I haven't done anything with that. I've been in limbo for 6 years. I was doing busking, and that was my last bit of work where I got money. I ain't done no work for 5 years, bros, sisters. I've been working on my artwork and stuff, but my life has been lost for the last 5 years. So I think I need to tell the rest of my story up until the present day in order to make sense of things. Like, how did I get to this point, basically? And only by connecting all the dots in my own life and running that story through to realize this is how I got here. okay, this is where I am. Where do I want to go next? Yeah, because like all that stuff I just said, all these different relationships, all these different activities and things, they feel like they belong to a past self. They feel like there was a disconnect point. So that 2014 moment was another massive change in my life, which I need to like describe that in detail, because from that point onwards, there was another change in my life, which was me becoming more self-reliant, independent, more. That was a breakup from the family. I broke up from the family then. Emotionally, I broke up with the family. My family broke up. My brother got married. My dad moved out. He got another girlfriend. My mum's been here. My mum and I have been living together since that time. My brother and his girlfriend, fiance, before they got married, they lived here for a little bit. Then they lived here for a bit when they were married, but I got pissed off with her because I found her controlling. I found them both controlling, actually, and imposing random rules on the household that just come out of nowhere. And they imposed rules that they discussed as though they'd discussed it with me as well. Like, oh, don't you know about this rule? And I was like, what do you mean? You've just made that up and now you're imposing it upon me. So yeah. So that happened. I got pissed off with her, and and she didn't feel like she wanted to live here anymore. So they moved out very quickly when they weren't really ready to. But so they found a place and moved out because I basically put pressure on them, because I thought I wasn't having fun with them being together in a house and bossing the whole house around. Like, they had the control of the fucking lounge and the master bedroom and everything. And it just felt like they'd taken over the house. Like, they'd got married and they were living as though they were living in their own married house, but it wasn't their own married house. It was this family house. So yeah. So I got pissed off and just had a go at her, and she didn't feel like she wanted to be around me anymore. It just made it really uncomfortable in the house. And then they moved out, which was actually the right thing for them to do, for them. But I just, I prompted it by being a dick, basically. Eventually things worked out better for them, but I think it would have been nice if I hadn't been a dick, certainly from her perspective. But that's just how things went down. I'm not saying I did her a favour. I'm saying I just expressed how I felt about the situation, about how they were behaving in the house. That it was wrong, and they were imposing themselves on the house and acting like kings of the castle in some way, which was not cool. So yeah, so I got pissed off at that and kicked them out, basically. I was busking in Slough. Oh god, there's too much. I can't say it all now. 4-hour video is probably going to be if I carry on. So my dad moved out. My brother and his girlfriend, fiance, whatever, married wife, moved in. They moved out. They found their place. So it's me and mum, right? Dad lived in Windsor. Owen and Bushra, brother and wife, lived in Bracknell, I think, first. Yeah, or maybe somewhere else briefly. But they lived in Bracknell for a while. Okay. Then, so mum and I were just living here. But dad would come back often to pick up his post, to just sort of nose around and stuff. I don't know what. He sort of like, he didn't kind of fully move out properly. Like, he sort of, I think he was just sort of weaning himself off from the place. He was lived out. Like, he had moved out fully, but he just kind of came back quite often. Like maybe a couple of times a week to begin with, and then he sort of phased himself out slowly. Now he very rarely comes around here. I mean, there was a period where I was in conflict with my dad as well, because he would come around here, use his key. He wouldn't like ring the doorbell. Bearing in mind, okay, yeah, he was the part owner of the house, so he did have a right to. But he didn't live here anymore. He had his own place, and he was just treating this like he could just kind of come in and go as he pleased, without realizing that that was an infringement upon the new situation that Mum and I had, and it was an infringement upon the privacy of, or the boundary of the house. You know, to just come in unannounced and to just walk around the house like randomly without me being aware that that was happening, without ringing the doorbell. You know, it felt like an intrusion. It was an intrusion, because it's not like it sort of like was a blur. He was blurring the situation, so he didn't live here. It was a courtesy, or it would have been respectful for him to have acknowledged that he didn't live there anymore. He couldn't just like walk in and out whenever he wanted to, out of respect. You know, it was respectful to the house to call ahead or to ring the doorbell. You know, not to just kind of barge in and just have the whole run of the house, like whatever, because it was just, I felt it was disrespectful, so I told him off for it basically, and he did start texting ahead or phoning ahead, and ringing the doorbell, and not just busting in with the key, because although he owns the house, he had to respect the fact that this was now a new living situation for Mum and I, and it wasn't the family house anymore. Okay, yeah, it is the family house and it isn't the family house. You know, it's like he had to acknowledge that their relationship was broken up, and it wasn't the same family situation anymore. So you can't treat this house like you used to when you just used to come in here, and when you lived here. You have to treat it as a place where other people live, not where you live, because you live in your flat. Yes, you own this house, but you have to kind of respect this in a different way, basically. So I enforced that, which was good, because I just felt like I was constantly being like imposed upon. You know, my dad would just randomly appear, randomly come round and like shout up to me as though it was back to 10 years ago or something. And I'm like, dude, things have moved on. You know, I don't have to kind of deal with you anymore, and I'm glad I don't have to deal with you anymore, because I had a really bad relationship with you, and in fact I like the fact that I don't have to deal with you anymore. And then you just come in and barge into our house without alerting us or whatever, or alerting me, and I felt that was really rude, actually. And I told him off. He doesn't come anymore. It comes every now and again, but it's by arrangement, like, yeah. So I have a much more distant relationship with my dad, but it's better that way. I had this awareness of like my dad's internal voice in my head that I would argue with for so much of my life, and it's only in the last year or two that argument has finished. I don't argue with my dad in my head anymore. You know, that's finally silenced. I finally resolved that argument. I have it every now and again, very slightly. I had it earlier on for like half a minute, whereas before it'd be for like half a day, arguing about something from the past in my head against my dad. Or because I was going to meet him later on, I'd be like thinking about what I'm going to say and what he might say against that, and what I'm going to say against him, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. So, so that relationship is kind of resolved, but it's at a distance now, because it just naturally has happened that way, and I'm glad it has. He's more like a friend, I suppose. He's not like a dad, and that's good, because that's more appropriate to the maturity level that I'm at now. It should have been this way longer ago, but it wasn't. It is the way it is. So I see him as a kind of a friend who I see less regularly than my actual friends, but he's like a sort of long lost friend or something. he's a sort of a friend I keep at a distance, because it's intense when I'm with my dad. You know, there's a lot of history and stuff, and he tends to think of me in terms of my past rather than my present still. But I don't break up with him in that sense. I don't break up that relationship because, one, he supports me financially. Two, this house is owned by him. So there's a bit of kind of guilt there, or a feeling of being tied to him. But also there's no real need to break up with him. I don't feel a stress in that relationship anymore. I feel it's okay. I don't feel criticised by him. I used to feel criticised by him. I don't feel like I need to argue against him. I relate to him when I want to relate to him, basically. And I spend time with him when I want to spend time with him. When he wants to as well, obviously. So it's a mutual relationship now. It's mutual, and I can be honest with him, tell him about things when they affect me. If there's something I don't like that he's doing, then I'll tell him, because I'm just me now with everyone. Whoever you are, I'm still me. Whereas before I had my child self versus my dad, my child self against my mom, or my social self and whatever. Now I just have my me self. It's me everywhere. Yeah. Okay, where was I going with this? Oh yeah, so my last job was at the Holiday Inn. No. Yeah. Premier Inn, sorry. Next to the Sainsbury's, near my house. Takes about 15 minutes to walk there. Had a terrible shift there, and then had a terrible half shift the next day. Walked out halfway through. That's why it was a half shift. Walked out halfway through the shift on my lunch break or dinner break, whatever, halfway through break thing. Just didn't go back. And tried to get paid for the work that I did and the training that I did, but they just were like, oh, no, you didn't spend long enough here, so fine. Okay, whatever. I was pissed off about that because the guy was like, who are you? The manager who'd interviewed me and hired me and spoken to me quite a lot. I was like, who are you? Refresh my memory, asshole, was what he was saying. And I was like, Ross Wilson, I did this work for you, blah, blah, blah. Refresh my memory. I'm like, you dick. Yeah, so I had a stressful time there. I figured at that point, after having gone through the job centre system as well for ages, that the working world was not for me. So then I had a new challenge to deal with, which was how to define my life without having a job that was set by other people. And also not doing the guitar teaching thing. So I hadn't mentioned that I quit the guitar teaching thing because I was listening to myself and I was feeling like I was depressed every time I was going to the guitar teaching jobs. And I was also feeling like it was out of integrity with myself as well, because I didn't really want to do that. That was never decided. Like, it was never kind of my calling in life. It was never what I wanted to do with myself. I did it because it was there, because it was offered, because it worked at the time. And then I was coming to this point where I was like, I need to do something that's more me. And I'm actually really resisting and dreading going to lessons, and I'm not enjoying it. I'm finding the kids difficult. I find it uncomfortable now. Adults are annoying to be around. The kids are starting to be weird, as in, like, I got some new people in, and I don't know. Plus, I was then going through this, like, I was going through all this therapy, so my emotions were all over the place as well, again. And I started to become an empath as well, which was where I would, like, be able to sense other people's emotions really strongly just by being around them. And these kids had all these weird emotions all over the place, and it made me feel sick and stuff. And I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. I couldn't do it because I was absorbing all this negativity from these kids, one or two in particular, who had this really sick feeling around them, and I just was like, I can't do this. Like, I feel sick around these people. I'm absorbing their energy because maybe their family is weird or oppressive or whatever. And I felt like this one particular kid was, like, in suffering, and as though he was relying on me to help him as well with his sort of feelings, whatever. And I was just feeling sick, and I'm like, I can't do this anymore. So I gave up guitar teaching finally, because I was like, this was not what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a musician. I didn't want to be a teacher of music. I wanted to be someone who does the music, who writes the music, who plays the music, but I don't ever want to be a teacher. That was just something that I did because it was there, because it worked, because it was easy, you know, that was handed to me. And so I quit that, and I hadn't got anything else lined up. I mean, I think I'd saved about £5 in the bank, so I had this like little comfort blanket, this small blanket of safety with regard to money in the bank. But I ended up spending most of that on going dating with different people. Yeah. Okay. Well, I started busking again. But yeah, when I quit the guitar teaching job, my parents and pretty much everyone around me was like, "Well, what have you got else lined up? What else have you got lined up?" And I was like, "Nothing. But I know I just need to do this." And I felt like I needed to actually force myself to rethink things by dropping what I had, because I needed to open up the space in my life for something else to come in. So one of the things I did initially after quitting guitar teaching, was selling books on Amazon. So I sold a hell of a load of books that I had, pretty much all the books that I had actually at that time, on Amazon. Not really for profit, but a little bit of profit. It was just kind of for something to do and to lighten up my emotional load in life. God, yeah. So I did all that. I was living at my grand's briefly again, because I didn't want to live here because stuff was shit here. Oh man. All right, I'm going to end the video because I can't do this now. This is too long. All right. Yeah, I've got to stop it because it's just too much to go through. I've done enough. Bye.